OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Alright, you're very welcome along. It's one of those days where we need about 12 hours to get to everything that happened. Very good morning to you. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can leave a comment at Off The Ball AM, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Just make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Off The Ball, if you want to leave a comment. Shane is here. Shane, good morning to you.
Good morning, how are things?
Very good. Adrian's here. Adrian, how are you?
Morning, Ger. Shane, how are you doing?
Shane is singing La Cucaracha in his Monaghan accent this morning.
It's a good day. I couldn't sleep last night. I think I slept for 2 hours. I was too excited. Too excited to talk about it. But anyway.
You were filming you and your old man for the Instagram. That's very dangerous territory there, Shane.
Yeah, especially when the old man doesn't want to be filmed, probably.
He did not look very happy about the whole thing.
He was actually, people said that to me, your dad was very relaxed. Dad was not relaxed.
He was just avoiding the camera.
He literally,
like, who's this guy?
He literally had to walk out with 3 or 4 minutes left. He had to walk around the kitchen and pace. He was like, what are Tyrone doing? Are Tyrone still winning? Are Tyrone still winning? It was a nervous one for Monaghan fans.
Are your family a bit like, what's your man's name down in Kerry? Tig Thingamabob, he's the influencer down there. Are your family a bit like, oh Jesus, here's your man? Like, are you actually recording about like 500 of those snippets a day?
No.
None of which see the light of day. Is that what happens?
I'm very much a man who lives in the moment. Now, I did just take a video of you two lads for my story.
And by the way, Ger, I will say that vehemently, a couple of weeks back, we had on a Friday, we were discussing, the merits and demerits of videoing sports moments at the key moments. And there was one person particularly in the room who was adamant that that's not something you should be doing.
It's funny, what's good for the goose is not good for the gander.
Check
right?
the time, the games were actually over. The games were all finished, so it was all good. It was a celebration time later.
The game was finished.
It was just finishing up, yeah.
No, it wasn't. You were filming the middle of it.
It's finishing up.
Get out of it.
There are literally too many things to get through. There's like a row on the pitch between Cork and Kilkenny in the league. There's Kylian Mbappe knowing who Evan Ferguson is. Yes, we can. The headlines in the back of that. There's the Irish rugby. We are going to get to the Irish rugby team. The Stephen Cluxton came back yesterday quietly, almost imperceptibly. We'll get as much of this going as we can in the Gillette Labs performance rankings now.
That wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Yeah, feel free to give us a bit of crap in the comments if you want for not getting to what it is that you want us to cover in the Gillette Labs performance rankings this week, because there's just too much going on. Shane wanted us to start in the green, by the way, which we do on very special occasions when there's only one thing that we can really talk about and we need to make sure we do it, but we're not doing it.
Oh yeah, it's not a big deal, yeah. It's not the Grand Slam on it. Go away, would you?
Can I also just say, it shouldn't be Monaghan in the green at all. It should be Kieran McManus. Like, what the hell?
Conor McManus.
Jesus Christ.
That's the old Sunday game trick.
Kieran was a good footballer of his day. I apologise.
I've had a little senior moment at the start of the show today. Can I please have another coffee?
That's twice you've pissed me off already this morning.
Great player, Kieran McManus.
He was, to be fair.
All-star.
Nowhere near as good.
Pretty sure he was an all-star.
I was
helping you out here, Jared. That's all.
Screwing up the Hall of Fame is one of the great things that the GA has managed to do over the last 10 years, where they launched it and then just forgot about it because it obviously didn't have a sponsor at the right level. And I don't mean that like a brand. Somebody wasn't driving it. But like McManus...
Yeah, statue in the town maybe.
Well, I don't know. It's just, this is ridiculous. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
we're not starting with the green.
No, we're not. We'll start in the red.
Because then you can't clip that bit.
Exactly, yeah. The news that came late last night, what was it, after 10 o'clock? It was 10:20 p.m. Thank you, Colin. Antonio Conte, gone from Spurs, hardly surprising, but... I guess the international break was the perfect window in which to do it. Now, we now have a clear understanding of his performance record in terms of how he compared managerially percentage-wise to his other clubs. Juventus, lads, he had a win percentage of 67.5%. At Chelsea, it was down slightly, 65.1. Down slightly again at Inter, 62.7. And 54.1 at Spurs.
I think the big thing is that he won leagues everywhere, though.
He did, yeah. Not at Spurs, no trophies.
At Inter, that was, you talk to Inter fans... when that news came through, they're this is transformative. He's going to win the league because he always wins the league. Maybe he will.
It's slightly strange that his second man in command, Stellini's taking the job to the end of the season. Ryan Mason as well. There was a video that went viral recently. I don't know if you lads saw it, of during the AC Milan game, the second leg, and Antonio Conte is giving directions to Harry Kane, and Ryan Mason is standing beside him, and Kane looks to Mason as if to say, what is he saying? What is he talking about here? What does he want? And Mason just shrugs his shoulders. He's like, I don't know. Walks away. It's brilliant.
Well, he did seem to have the magic touch for a couple of games where Conte was away. Is the timing of this not a little bit strange? Does nobody else think? Like, we're 8 days now since their last game. Where you mentioned the international window, Shane. Like, the international window is nearly closed. Like, it's a bizarre timing. If you were into a bit of a conspiracy there, I don't know how we feel about a nice conspiracy in the Monday morning.
Throw it over.
There's a little bit of tinfoil hat, but England have just finished their game, obviously, and Harry Kane would have been very much front and centre over the last number of days, obviously chatting about all that. And now it doesn't need to be commenting about this thing. It's strange timing. Whatever about that slight tinfoil hat aspect to it. It's certainly strange, isn't it? That like there's no new information has come to light.
Well,
the rant is well old, unless they've sidled up to.
The training sessions hadn't. There was nothing. There was no work being done. He wasn't due back. He was in Italy. He was due back to take training, and so it was like, don't come back. That was it. So there was no job for him to do in the meantime. There was going to be a job for him to do, and also I think to your point, if they had sacked it, there would have been constant questions of Harry Kane. They wait until the moment where the news dump happens at its most appropriate moment, and obviously this was done ages. Like they were just coming to an arrangement.
Even in terms of clearing the decks to talk to the new person, whoever that would be. Maybe that's the development. Maybe there's a little.
Well, I think you bring up developments like Thomas Tuchel. The dominoes are falling. Other clubs are getting their managerial house in order. So they want to know what's out there, and I don't think they're going to get somebody new in this season. It looks like that dynamic duo partnership who have taken the club over already for couple of big games and done pretty well in those big games. I think that's the thing here. But we're not. You knew it was coming, so it's not a surprise.
Nagelsmann. I mean, the timing of Nagelsmann's departure from Bayern is, could work out perfectly for them if they wanted to go for him. I think he's the favourite.
Is he?
Let me just double check the odds. He certainly last night when I checked was the favourite, but would not make sense.
No.
They've confirmed that the two lads are taking it to the end of the season, right? Isn't that in itself slightly bizarre? Because like, if a Nagelsmann or a Pochettino or whoever it is that comes available, surely over the next, never mind about weeks, over the next few days, they're just going to go, "Grad, you're in," and then they have to slightly kind of go back in their word a little bit. But
well, no one cares at that stage, right?
Maybe nobody cares. The whole Conte thing has been slightly bizarre in a lot of ways. There's not many people saying that the job is above Conte, right? Like, it's more to do with this sort of narrative that he's pumping himself, obviously, post his 10-minute rant, and obviously results, and they're standing at the table and all that kind of stuff feeds into it. But at the same time, there's not a lot of people going, he's just not up to the job here. Like, he's going to walk into a big job in Italy or somewhere else somewhere very soon.
He just checked out mentally, didn't he? So long ago. Like, it must have been a strange few months for Spurs fans where, like, our manager doesn't even care anymore. I know he's had he said close family and friends passing away in the last number of months. He said the gallbladder surgery. So he's had a tough time of it, Antonio Conte. And I suppose you forget sometimes that these lads are human beings, even though we're always like, oh, well, they're earning loads of money. They're well compensated for their travails. But still, you have to have some sympathy for the man. And it's probably best for everyone that he's gone now, for himself included.
Fergus Keogh wants to know, is Conte really the problem or is it Spurs?
I think it's the latter. I mean, he's asking the question and I think he knows the answer. Like, it's not a series. It was a fourth manager in 4 years. I was surprised it's only that few. But there does seem to be a constant. Pochettino's probably the one outlier. Just this constant cycle of managers and, not buying players in the correct positions, not buying the best players available. The whole Harry Kane saga limping on.
I did think that there was a world in which actually Conte and the timing of his arrival at Spurs was perfect. The stadium was open. They still had Harry Kane. He was a manager who would anticipate and expect a massive injection of cash. They have the resources to do that on the basis of the amount of money that they're making on every match day that we keep hearing about, and the fact that, like, Champions League football means that they'll be able to fill the stadium, blah, blah, blah. It felt like it was actually a perfect marriage of opportunity and moment, and somehow Spurs and Conte, I think, both blew it. I don't think Conte emerges unscathed from this. I don't think Conte is still at the same level as a manager that he was. Now the team is fourth. That's probably about where they should be, but I still think that they could probably have been pushing Manchester United this season. I don't see a significant difference between the two squads, or I don't think it's as big as everybody says it is. And they did invest loads of money, and it was supposed to be players that Paratici was buying for Conte and Conte's style of football. So he definitely suffers in this. And Spurs, like, really, I mean, if you're a world-class manager who's thinking about enhancing your reputation as opposed to just getting a payday, are you going to Spurs now? Like, Spurs will be much better getting Brendan Rodgers in than Julian Nagelsmann. If you talk to we had Jasmine Babb on the show for ages, and she's like, Nagelsmann's teams don't make any sense. His style of football doesn't make any sense. So I'm not surprised Bayern kicked him out. Like, somebody here is saying in our comments, Nagelsmann came on the market, so they pulled the trigger on Conte, and apparently Spurs wanted him before they brought Conte in. He is the archetypal, short-lived 18-month manager who comes with a massive backroom team and a massive reputation, and you're paying him for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and you're on to your second or third manager afterwards. So
Well, are you waiting if you're one of those managers to see if Spurs get top 4? Because
the music starts, the merry-go-round goes, somebody hops on, the carnival, the barkers are there. Like, roll up.
I'd say there's a lot of managers looking at that Spurs squad going, I don't fancy them getting top 4 this season, so maybe don't take over the job now. Wait and see. Do they get Champions League?
On Ger's point, I don't know that changes at any point. Like, they're not going to ever spend enough money in the market. And even, like, there was chat about De Zerbi, wasn't there, over the last couple of weeks? Like, would you stay at Brighton and build your project there under some, like, really smart... They make some really smart acquisitions. They've obviously got an amazing pool of players there. Or do you hop into this absolute, like, basket case of a club where you're going to probably knock a year out of it and then they're going to run you out of town?
And Kane will be out the door as well, probably.
Does it increasingly look like...
It obviously depends
on the money. Is Kane going to be Matt Letizia, right, and look back in his career and go... Matt Letizia doesn't look back on his career. The many things he does at the minute is to not look back in his career with any regrets, but he probably should do, I would say.
Penalty merchant, is that what you're saying?
But is he going to look back in his career and say, I really, really, really should have got out of there when the going was good?
Well, I think Spurs are a much bigger club than Southampton, first off, and so Harry Kane's also like England's record top goal scorer, so and has a golden boot at the World Cup, so I suspect he'd be happy enough.
Yeah, but if King was into punditry in 10 years' time, do you want as your super underneath your name on TV when Spurs are playing?
Greatest goal scorer in the history of English football.
Yeah, but for club games,
post 92.
For club games, I mean, what trophy has he won?
I mean, okay.
Got to win trophies, Ger.
You don't actually. It turns out you actually don't. That's all bollocks, right? Like, I won 3 league cups. I'm a genius. Like, we know lots of crap players have won.
With a player with Kane's ambition, you got to be thinking he wants to be at Man City, or he wants to be at an Arsenal. Probably not Arsenal. He wants to be at a club that are actually winning something. Surely.
Yeah, but I don't think the ship has sailed. I think Spurs are going to spend money, and Spurs did spend money. Like, Spurs were big spenders last year and have been slightly unfortunate with some injuries, and so I don't think it's beyond the bounds of possibility that they will spend. It's just that I don't think that the culture of spending and the architecture built around scouting is good enough and strong enough at the moment. So that's why I'd be wary if I was one of those world-class managers. The one thing about De Zerbi is, right, so how much is De Zerbi on at Brighton? No doubt he's on $1.5 million to maybe $2.5 million max. Does he then get 10 million for going to Spurs, in which case, irrespective of whether or not it's a basket case, what are you saying to that, Adrian? Does that change your tune?
Where's the bit of paper? Where's my pen?
Where do I sign?
All right.
Move on.
Will United be knocking on Evan's door this summer, asks Jim Sullivan. Again.
Stranger things have happened.
James McCullough. Morning, gents. I'm gutted for Monaghan GA are not in the green for the performance rankings. We were predicted mid-table in Division 3, but topped it with 6 wins and only 1 point lost. It's a remarkable story. We will do the rest of the League GA stories later on in the week, and we'll get into the power rankings and all that kind of stuff as well. It doesn't matter who takes over. Tottenham will always be a club of the bottle. It's in the club's DNA. A club of the bottle. I like what you've said there. It may be a typo, but it makes perfect sense to everybody, and we all know exactly what you mean. They're a club of the bottle. Did Rory bottle it? Did Rory should he have been in red?
I don't.
2 up with 3 to play in the semi-finals of the World Match Play.
Maybe, and then he beat Scheffler in the consolation match. I don't know. I think.
Or is Rory in green because his form is back?
There you go.
I don't know.
The Ferguson to United thing, by the way, it's been interesting to see. My social media feeds have been stacked full of, like, the latest sort of hipster football. What would you call them? Contributors.
Oh, yes.
In England, basically, who've all sort of, like, in a domino effect. Oh, this guy Evan Ferguson. They've all seen each other making videos about Evan Ferguson, and the latest one is Goldbridge, and he's gone. This Evan Ferguson guy. I mean, he's been even Ivan Ferguson, I saw him get called in one of them, and United should be interested in this guy. I've just discovered him.
Named after the poet Ivan Boland, of course.
Of course, famously. Shall we move on to the other performances of the weekend? And still in the red is
Galway's pro him, obviously. Yes.
Oh yeah, they all are. It's like I've discovered this kid.
Yeah.
Remember you heard it here first, and the 20 other influencers.
What a scout you are, Galbridge. Well done. Irish women's rugby, bad weekend. Kind of thought, they're going to get some revenge on Wales after last year, but it wasn't to be in that match in Cardiff, and a disappointing defeat. Nearly 5,000 people, a record crowd over in Wales as well for them. Ill-disciplined, I think, is a phrase you could use to describe Ireland's performance. Nicola Friday, the captain, was fairly disappointed speaking afterwards, and she pointed to a number of things. It's one thing losing a game in the Six Nations, but when you haven't played well for the guts of an hour, it certainly adds to the element of disappointment, and it leaves you thinking, right, well, we've England and France at home. Those games, with all due respect to the Irish team, are going to be very, very difficult to get anything from. So this seemed like an opportunity to maybe sneak a top 3 place in the Six Nations this year, but it's off to the worst possible start, lads. It's fairly disappointing, to say the least.
It's an unmitigated disaster. It's certainly there's a few people, I don't know if you follow the same people on Twitter that I follow, but there's a guy who's been involved in club rugby and the women's game for ages, who like every couple of weeks will have a long thread of the litany of problems in women's rugby, and every time you read it you're like, well, this all seems to make a lot of sense. And it doesn't seem like the stakeholders in the club game were ever involved in what happened over the last 18 months to 2 years. So it looks like there's been the phrase is window dressing, I think, in Roy Keane's piece in the Mail today. A lot of window dressing is done at the top level, and they're hoping somehow that last season's tour to Japan could somehow get the current crop up, who, bear in mind, don't have all their best players because we've decided to prioritise the 7s over the 15s game because of World Cup qualification leading to extra money. And so then it kind of becomes self-financing. We're trying to fight these two wars on two different fronts with no resources, really, when you compare the women's game to the men's game, or even the Irish women's game to the English or the French women's game, or now it turns out the Welsh, who are all playing their club rugby in England too. So it must be very difficult for the coaching ticket for them to assess where to go. But the IRFU are totally and utterly 100% responsible for this. And the people who are in charge of the IRFU have been involved in the IRFU for a long period of time. We saw that letter that the players all signed. Is that 2 years ago now? Is it less than 2 years? Is it? So I don't know. I think that this is the chickens coming home to roost, really. And the talk of finishing third now looks fanciful, and it's a real rod for their backs, because that's what they said. Like, we need to be the best of the rest behind France and England, and the performance levels weren't there. They looked well off it. This may be an overreaction to one bad performance, and maybe they can recover it over the rest of the Six Nations, or else it is just a wake-up call for the IRFU to go, actually, the stuff that we're pretending to be doing here by offering contracts and giving ourselves great pats on the back as an organisation for our equality is miles off where it needs to be.
It was very dispiriting, really dispiriting, and the points that you make mean that it's not going to get all that better anytime soon. Like that entire Wales 23. And by the way, you have to remind yourself that we were within a hair's breadth of getting the wooden spoon last year as well, and we're not going to be a million miles off. It was a last minute try against the Scots that saved at that time. But the Wales 23 are all playing their rugby in the Premier 15s, which is the best league in the world, and the Irish players aren't. And they're very much encouraged, obviously, to be home-based players, but like you say, the system that's feeding the men's team, for example, and all the plaudits they've got over the last while, is just not there on the women's side. Wales were grand. Like their world-class basics, to borrow the phrase of the last 7 days, were absolutely their basics were world-class. They really were. Like it wasn't as if they were doing anything wildly different to Ireland. It's just they were able to execute all the basic skills brilliantly.
Yeah,
and look, there's the structure bit, and then there's the right. We have to pick ourselves up, and we have to welcome France to Dublin, obviously, next Saturday, and we need to
Cork. They're all in Musgrave.
To Cork. Sorry, you're right. There's that bit going on, and look, they'll be grasping at sort of whatever positives they can. It was 5-5 in the second half. Maybe there's some way of. France is probably, France struggled against Italy actually over the weekend as well, which in itself was slightly bizarre, but maybe more of an indication that Italy are also going to finish ahead of Ireland in the Six Nations. But yeah, you just couldn't get away from the sense of it just been an incredibly deflating experience.
Yeah, bit dispiriting. And look, Wales kind of targeted that young Irish team as well. We kind of spoke with Quinny on that on Friday. Like, Sive McGrath's only 18 and she's thrown straight in, and the Welsh pack just targeted her. You could clearly see that. So the youthful players in the Irish team had a tough time, but look, it's an experience for them. But unfortunately for them, had to be in the red this morning. We'll stick with rugby for the Amber lads, because mixed weekend, I guess you could say, for the Irish provinces in the URC. Leinster will be top seeds in the URC playoffs. That stunning 22-all draw with the Stormers. So the 19-game winning run comes to an end, but I don't think they'll be too upset. A lot of Leinster players, of course, missing after the Grand Slam exploits, but number of good tries. Scott Penny and Max Deegan among them, Rob Russell as well. I think Leo Cullen will be pretty happy with the way things went.
They were getting killed in the first half by a team laden with Springboks, and then they fought back to I think maybe they'll be a bit disappointed that they didn't get the victory in the end. Like a difficult game for them, but when you look at the list of players who are to come back in both the pack and the backs, it's like basically the full Ireland team minus Sexton and Ringrose, who are going to be back in for the game against Ulster next weekend. So the strength and depth that they have is really interesting, and their ability to perform without those frontline players, and their ability to come back from a situation and to dig in. There was numerous bits where there was one instant where they were attacking and it looked like they were going to score, and the ball got turned over, and was it the Bulls they were playing?
Stormers,
sorry. The South African team run the length of the pitch, and they're about to run a try in when, and there's somebody's done it might have been Berta Jackman on Twitter, I'm not sure, but points out that the trailing winger has made up like all this ground to just about get over and jackal the ball, and that keeps them at 22 and they don't score again. So it's like this kind of turning point in the match where it looks like you're about to score to get back in. I think it might have been just before half time, and all of a sudden you're forced to defend. And I'm bringing this up because it's a complete contrast with the situation at Munster, and I'm really interested to hear what Alan Quinlan has to say about this, because of all of the lows that Munster have had, the 31-0 down at home, what the hell is going on there? Because we kept hearing that the Ireland team needs to be more representative. There's all these great young players who should be given an opportunity. They should be in the squad. Let's be having you now, lads. Where are you?
20 unanswered points for the Warriors in the first half. That's worrying at home, especially. It'd be worrying enough in Glasgow.
Well, Quinny himself was saying, wasn't he, on Friday, that the Glasgow game, the upcoming Stormers game, and the upcoming Sharks game, I think, in the URC are way more important than the Sharks game in the Highton Cup for Munster, and that's an awful start for them.
Sorry, both in South Africa, those two games, as they're looking to stay in the URC, that's worrying for Munster for sure.
How many teams, by the way? When you watched Leinster on Friday night, I have to say, I'm not saying it's top of the list, but there are a few things I enjoy more than a URC game on a Friday night. It's an absolute cracker. But they're 17-0 down. How many teams are you looking at in that position going, grand, no panic here, they'll probably get back into this game? They're just and I don't know, on your point, Ger, how many of those players are actually going to be in the team for next weekend? Possibly none of them.
Very few of them will be, but you've no doubts about Scott Penny now as somebody who will be the long-term successor to Josh van der Fleer,
or 10 years time,
if he needs to step in at any point, that he's going to be capable of doing that. And you're definitely, I have my rugby app going, who's this, what's this, where's that, what age is he? And I don't know, it's an incredible testimony to the quality of coaching that's going on. In fairness, Munster did come out in the second half and show something. So there is something for them to work on in training this week, but it's very, very disappointing. Ulster, on the other hand, Ulster have gone from absolute basket case to, this is what we thought you were the whole time.
The Tom Stewart show. I think Rob Herring will start against Leinster next weekend, but all of a sudden, Dan McFarlane has a decision to make, doesn't he? I mean, Stewart's unbelievable. His try-scoring record rivals any winger in the URC. It's incredible. He's certainly putting himself, I know hooker is probably one of those positions where we've got a few options, let's be honest.
Well, but, I mean, it's incredibly attritional. So would you be terribly surprised to see him get some game time at the World Cup? I would absolutely not be at this stage.
And he was involved. He was around the squad at Abbottstown throughout the Six Nations as well. Just didn't really get his opportunity. But the performances he's putting in, lads, he's only a kid as well. Dan McFarlane was keen to point out after the game he has things to improve as well. He gave away a couple of penalties later on in the match, but of course he's going to do that.
I don't think there's any. I mean, even what you're saying there, I think that Herring is going to start, isn't he? I mean,
he will, but like, surely there's a decision to be made now. If you score a hat-trick of tries, he's the form. Do you pick the form player?
The captain, isn't he?
Yeah, but do you like?
Well, Herring's not out of form. He literally scored a try. He's just after scoring a try in the Six Nations. So
two other things on this. They obviously have largely their first choice backs available to them, and that's beginning to look really impressive as well. So all of a sudden, what was a complete gimme when the draw was made for Leinster looked less like a gimme than it would have been. So you can expect a proper game, and Ulster have definitely racked up big scores against Leinster before, and stuff has happened in the game, and their heads have dropped. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens in that game.
Clean sweep, by the way, for Ulster against the four South African sides, which is not bad.
No, I mean they've completely rescued their season, where you were wondering about whether or not everybody was aligned. They are 100% aligned at this stage, and you would expect them to cause some damage later on in the competition as well. Quick word about Connacht. Obviously, this is the end of the Andy Friend era, and he's gone out with a bang.
Yeah, 41-26 point win over Edinburgh. Bonus point win as well. Performance was very good, I think. The atmosphere looked fairly rousing in the sports ground, as it usually is. And when you think about the fact that they're missing Mac Hansen, they're missing Bundy Aki, they're missing Finlay Bealham, pretty good. I think Connacht fans this morning will be waking up with a smile on their face.
I hope they've made peace with Bundy, and I hope he's going to start playing for the rest of the season, because they could definitely do with him being added to the team, and adding bums on seats as well. Real cult hero. So anyway, we say mixed weekend. It was a brilliant weekend for three of the provinces, and a disaster from Munster's perspective, but an opportunity for them to turn things around really quickly. And obviously they'll have Peter Manny back in the side for next weekend. I do now think that all of a sudden that away game in South Africa is massive for them, because if they were to go and get tanked, if they were to roll over the way they did in the first half last week, then something cultural is wrong. But if they were to be able to get a performance, you can write that off. We got something wrong in the build up to it. We took our eye off the ball, blah, blah, blah. You can, in professional sport, you can blink away a bad performance if you get a good one. So anyway, more on that a little bit later on with Quinny. Somebody was tweeting us the unofficial continuity Monaghan GA supporters club with a picture of 3 cockroaches. Why? Because of this.
By the way, don't rule Monaghan out yet. The cockroaches of Division 1. They've always stayed up on the last day, usually. So beat Mayo, hope Tyrone do them a favour beating Armagh. You just never know, lads.
Come friendly bombs and fall on the Allianz National Football League, and there was another nuclear conflagration.
Yeah,
Tyrone did their bit by dragging Armagh into the deep water and drowning them like I thought they would.
Well, you wouldn't let me talk about them in the green, Ger, which I thought, by the way, was a disgrace. You were like, it's not that big. It's not that big a deal. Let's not talk about Monaghan early on. No one really cares.
We're not leading with it.
It's a joke. Let me tell you something, right? And clearly I said it in the clip, I was reasonably confident. People come up to me last week in their droves, on the street, in the office, at home. They were like, Monaghan...
that's 3 people, yeah. Go on.
Great run, lads. Great run. You've had a great run in Division 1. It's going to be a disappointing weekend for you in Castlebar, isn't it? I had to log on to rip.ie to double check had the funeral arrangements been made. Was it house private? What was the story here? I couldn't find anything. There was no mention of Monaghan's death or demise from Division 1 just yet. And lo and behold, they put in a performance yesterday against Mayo in Castlebar that belied belief, apparently. And a 10th successive year in Division 1 next year.
Your underlying assumption there is that this was par for the course.
For Monaghan, it is.
That is never in doubt. But come off it. Like what? It's 5 out of the last 9 years. Is that right? That they've stayed up on the last day. Like it's absolutely in doubt. It's always in doubt. And like if you look at the record, even like over the last couple of years, they scraped through.
And what?
Last year. With a 1 point win over Dublin.
Yeah, a 1 point win over Dublin, yeah. You'll take it, won't you?
Last year, Down were the only team they beat in the championship.
All right, yeah.
Here are their wins over the last 2 years in the league. Now, this is a Division 1 team, right, who you're saying justifiably...
you're about to embarrass yourself here, but go on.
Monaghan, they beat a poor Donegal team twice.
Right.
They beat a poor Dublin team, of course, last year.
Poor Dublin team.
They beat Roscommon. They beat the Mayo team, who were basically already checked out and had 10 changes from the previous weekend. That's the sum of their wins in total, right? Over 2 years. We're not talking about 1 year here.
Sorry.
5 wins in 2 years, and somehow they stay in. And they've Tyrone, obviously, next month in Omagh. And talking about dragging teams into the deep water, there was some conversation on the Sunday game last night about the possibility of which way this game was going to go. Conor McManus is the one caveat here, but that notwithstanding, What are Monaghan? Monaghan are not a Division 1 team. They should be.
Sorry, they've been in Division 1 for 10 years.
They should be.
Only Kerry have been in Division 1 for longer.
They'd be better off taking a
Sorry,
step down.
you forgot the Roscommon game that they won this year.
By the way, I
I
mentioned Roscommon.
Well, sorry, they came to Clonus Roscommon. Remember, having won their first 3 games, Monaghan were the first team to beat them.
And then it turned out they weren't as good as everybody.
Mayo have their first defeat of the year. I'm not getting drawn into your shite anyway. Monaghan deservedly a Division 1 team, and by the way, they're part of the furniture now in Division 1.
Can I ask a question? So you look at them last night, and they're a goal and 3 to 2 points up after no time at all, and they look absolutely pumped. They're coming out the pitch, they're fisted on.
Yeah.
What is the problem that they just can't get pumped for games?
Monaghan.
Yeah.
They were ahead.
Sorry, they do get pumped in a lot of games. I'm talking about like get pumped up for games or get up for games. It seems like if you look at their history over the last couple of years in the Championship of the League, you have to accept that they're not beating teams around them.
They are beating teams around them. They're staying in Division 1 every single year for the last 10 years.
They beat Down in the Championship last year, Shane. That was it.
They had a poor Championship last year by their own standards, of course.
Standards.
Yeah, but by their own standards. Yeah, Monaghan are a top tier team. Sorry, Monaghan have been in the top 6 in the country in the last 10 years. That's the league stats for you. Because to stay in Division 1,
can I ask
you have to be in the top 6.
A legitimate question though, right?
Yes.
Would they actually just be better off some year coming through Division 2, bouncing in with a sense of confidence and a winning mentality, and forgetting about the Ulster Championship and trying to make an All-Ireland semi-final? They're a bit like the Irish rugby team in that they've never been beyond the quarterfinals, even though they've won a couple of Ulsters, and
they were in the semi-finals in the 18 as well, yeah.
In the semi-final of the All-Ireland?
Yeah, lost to Tyrone by a point. Kicking the ball.
Sorry. Okay.
But like this Monaghan team, I hear your point. Like sometimes you're better off with a good Division 2 campaign. But the problem with Division 2 is you lose your first 2 games, and all of a sudden you're thinking, Jesus, we better not go down to Division 3.
I remember talking to one of the ultimate Monaghan GA men, and he was like, "Look, we're never going to win an All Ireland, but we can win an Ulster." I was like,
That's not the attitude to have. I disagree with whoever that was.
I don't know about that. Well, it's like
you have to believe you can win an All Ireland.
Well, I think that like the obsession with Ulster, that's your white whale. You kill the white whale and you're like, let's get fat on the blower.
I actually think Monaghan's attitude this year is different. I look at, my point about wanting to be in Division 1, look at some of the young players in that Monaghan. And by the way, that Monaghan forward line, any county would be delighted to have Conor McCarthy, Conor McManus, Jack McCarran, Micheál Bannigan, Stephen O'Hanlon. It's ridiculous, the talent of that forward line.
We do just need to take a second for Conor McManus and what he's doing at this stage of his career. Because every year at the end of the season, he'll do a piece with us for the last 4 or 5 years and he'll be like, you're going to ask me about retirement. I've stopped it. Just totally stopped. I don't think you should ever retire. When you're able to do this in the league,
it does mean that anything's possible, doesn't it? Like that's the one caveat from Monaghan, I would say.
Caveat,
But no, I would agree. I would agree. And you're taking this as a personal slight, which is not intended as. But I would agree that they are better off in Division 2 and going in and winning a load of games.
They're not.
Shane, they've won 5 games against average sides in Division 1 for various reasons. Either they'd in Mayo's case, obviously checked out, or they'd not been at the level we thought they were. Certainly in Donegal's case. I fair enough on the Roscommon one, I can argue with you that over and back, but their level is clearly, if they've won 5 league games over 2 years,
you just need to win enough games
1.
to stay up in Division 1.
I know, but that's like table rationale, and it doesn't make full sense.
But of course it does. You stay in Division 1. How many?
I do see the benefit of it in that everybody plays Division 1 football all the time, but they haven't been able to get to a point where they believe in themselves as realistic All-Ireland contenders. And anyway, let's move on.
Sorry, Monaghan, the group. See the group. I guess structure this year that suits Monaghan down to a T.
Hopefully,
they had a Super 8 group with Kerry, Galway, and Kildare a few years ago, and they topped it. Do you know Monaghan treated like a league? And Monaghan will treat that group in the Championship like a league.
Okay, so this year All-Ireland semi-final?
If they treat it like a league, they'll be... What?
100%. If
Monaghan like a Monaghan league or like, a good team's league.
Vinnie Corey, Monaghan, up your boys. Don't listen to these lads. Fair play, you stayed in Division 1. 10th year in a row. Jealous. They're jealous. Westmeath would love to be there in Division 1.
Okay,
Kildare would
too.
Division
3, Shane, will you stop?
Yeah. Well, listen, enjoy your Talton Cup. Stephen Cluxton, will we touch on him? Because the news kind of came out of the blue yesterday. I'm going to keep my Monaghan thing on my head here, by the way, for this conversation, because I've put it on now. Walks out of the dressing room. No one has heard any rumours that Stephen Cluxton is back in the Monaghan panel, but all of a sudden, here he is.
In the Dublin panel.
Sorry, of course, the Dublin panel. Yeah, who did I say?
Monaghan.
Oh, did I? Well, Monaghan on the brain, lads. Apologies. For this game against Louth yesterday, good win for Dublin. Back up to Division 1, straight back up. Does he play? I mean, what's the end game here for Stephen Cluxton? Is Desi Farrell suggesting afterwards that he was kind of coming in to cover a few injuries?
Yeah, I think we put Dublin in the green because Dublin have Mannion back. They'll have McCaffrey back by the time the championship matches matter, which, let's face it, they don't have an important match again. Obviously the league final, and then there's a month of them playing a few friendlies before they get to the group stages, right? And there's some trophy given out in the meantime that I wonder, will they go up the steps to? They certainly won't celebrate it wildly. There's a 13 in a row, 14 in a row that they're going to win in Leinster. They're back because they have strength and depth. I see people like, oh, they need to change their style of play. Like, we haven't seen Dublin play football the way Dublin want to play football just yet, because they don't need to. They're the poster child for, like, get everybody back, get some strength and depth. And I assume that him coming back means that they have significant doubts about whether or not Evan Comerford is going to be fit for the championship. I don't think he's going to start. That's my instinct on this. I don't think he's going to start.
But do you think he should?
I don't know, but sure, how can you tell? Is he the same goalkeeper he was when he retired? If that's the case, then of course he should. But like, the man in charge is the one with possession of the jersey, who they've had in every game this year and who has done really, really well. Who was brilliant yesterday, by the way. So maybe Cluxton's coming back in some kind of coaching capacity, and this isn't just he's coming back to slit the throat of his rivals, like he, you know.
I think this is like, it's I think there's a big sort of a Paul Scholes back to United job about this. I do think that there is a requirement. They look, at fair enough, obviously they're low on numbers. Desi was basically saying that yesterday, we just literally don't have enough numbers, and then we've got like the greatest of all time sitting over here. He said he's available whenever we need him, so we'll stick him in. But like, you know, even when you look at the coaching thing, it wouldn't be the worst thing to say to O'Hanlon. I mean, Comfort's maybe not going to be around the environment depending on the injury, to say to him, listen, you know, we've got the goat back, you just like take a seat there for a while and we'll come back to you next year. You just spend the year looking at this guy and what he does. Like, he probably wouldn't have even been in and around the camp when Cluxton was there last year. Like, there's the one time where everybody's starting talking about Mayo to win the All-Ireland, and suddenly Avengers assemble over here. Like, McCaffrey's back, Mannion kicks a point from the gods yesterday, Cluxton's back now. I take what you're saying, right? But like, isn't a half at Cluxton as good, you know, nearly better than any other keeper that's ever lived?
We don't know. I like it.
So that's fair enough.
If he hits all the benchmarks in training, then maybe you have to give him an opportunity in a match to see if he's still the same. But irrespective of whether or not he is, like, because I remember talking to somebody involved with the Cork setup when Donal Logue came back. I was like, oh, you know, he's got to go straight back in. They're like, what are you talking about? We've got Anthony Nash. No one's getting in his place because he's in and he's playing really well. So this guy who has played all season has played really well and was making brilliant saves yesterday when there was a goal chance. There was 6 points down, I think. He makes a brilliant save. The game is settled. The game is actually over. That kind of sucks the wind out of Louth. So
I was even reading a piece in the Irish Times last weekend about David O'Hanlon and his kicking stats. His goal kicks have been brilliant.
Yeah.
Like,
so look, it's good problem to have, but I see people like, oh, that's not what they need. It's like, well, it's amazing. It's a shot in the arm for everybody. The standards, no one's like slacking in any drill when Cluxton is around. And also, it doesn't remember, it's like, oh, Desi's lost the dressing room, he's lost all these players, none of them's coming back, and here's Cluxton straight back when he's needed. Like,
it's incredible that they've managed to keep a lid on it for 2 weeks. It really is. And like, when you talk about Desi, I think that's like a
in this day and
testament
age
to him. That is
smartphones. Like, that's
it's also detracted slightly from the bigger talking point around Dublin, which is like, where are this team going this year? Like, 40 minutes in yesterday, they'd scored, if I'm right, it might have been 5 points. Against people are talking about Louth, and that's absolutely fair enough, and I'm not here to have a pop at Louth, but where this it'll be very interesting to see how they go in the league final against Derry.
I don't think we're going to know anything about the Dubs until an All-Ireland quarter final, because like, as Leinster champions, they're going to be number one seeds.
Louth.
They're going to be number one seeds in the round robin stage. Where's their neutral game going to be? Have we worked that out yet?
Well, it depends on who's in the group, doesn't it? It'll be geographical, I suppose.
I think the league final is going to be the best test we'll see of Dublin for the next while.
I don't think the league final. I don't think in the long run, how they play against Derry, they might try some stuff. But like, were they lorrying ball into the full forward line the way they did against Meath yesterday, or was that just a thing for Meath? Are they waiting on that? I think the nuances of what Dublin are going to do won't emerge until they play somebody good, and they're not going to play somebody good for months. Anyway, we have one more in the green. It's France. Like, we're not gonna talk too much about this. France were amazing on Friday night. Now, we should bear in mind that a virus ripped through the Netherlands squad and they were missing 4 or 5 of their best players. But notwithstanding that, Kylian Mbappe, the captain, he wants a hat-trick to overtake Michel Platini this weekend. Tonight.
Please don't do it tonight, Killian.
He's like, I might get it tonight. I'm not sure. Will I get it tonight?
You're young, Killian.
I don't know.
Take it easy.
Whatever he decides to do, he'll do.
Right. Okay, that was this week's version of the Gillette Labs Performance Rankings.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
We should tell you there is breaking news from Australia that Cora Staunton has called time on her AFLW career. The Giants' all-time leading goal kicker and games record holder has called time on her AFLW career. Started in 2017, so it was a 6-year career. Played 50 times across 6 seasons in the competition. The first Giant to play 50 games ever for the club, and was her last match was against the round 10 match against the Gold Coast Suns. So not a bad career Cora Staunton has managed to have, to be one of the greatest Gaelic footballers of all time, and then head to Australia and to be one of the most successful AFLW stars as that league gets up and running. So yeah, we wish you all the best in your retirement from that game and the other game, and I presume there'll be a lot of club football in your future where defences are going to be absolutely terrified about what comes next in local Mayo football. So anyway, an incredible career from Cora Staunton. 10 minutes past 8 this morning. Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of Off the Ball, coming to an Applegreen near you. New Braeburn locations popping up every month. Visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn coffee experience. Up next, Gavin Cummiskey talking the Republic of Ireland. Here is some Sunday paper review goodness talking Evan Ferguson.
It was to even think about taking Evan away now. I couldn't take it. And for those of you going, but hang on, he's played for Ireland. What do you mean, would he be on their radar? So this piece by Paul Rowan says, Ferguson almost certain to make his competitive debut against France tomorrow, but technically he could still switch to play for England if he plays 3 or fewer competitive games for Ireland before he reaches the age of 21.
The rules are mad, aren't they?
Does that mean we're hoping he doesn't score 5 tomorrow? Like, just have 3 average games and then do your thing? Is that what we're hoping for?
Look, I know even you were saying it in jest, but it is something that keeps coming up and will keep coming up until he legally is 100% tied to Ireland. I can tell you there has never been any hope, nor is there any hope whatsoever of Evan Ferguson ever declaring for England. I understand why we're so wary given our previous defections, but no, Evan Ferguson, if you 10-minute conversation with Evan's dad, which I've had on 1 or 2 occasions, would make you aware fairly quickly Evan Ferguson won't be heading off to play for England
over my dead body.
Well, he doesn't need to go that far, but I mean, the man is bloody employed. His dad is employed by the FAI. Like, you know, he's fully indoctrinated, that's for sure, thankfully.
OTB AM,
the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
OTB Rugby.
You still have to get it done at the time that it really counts, which we have not managed to do. It's the first time that you could genuinely say that there's a chance, with lots going right for us, that we could be World Cup champions. But
subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
The Heineken Champions Cup is back. Leinster take on Ulster in the round of 16, Saturday, April 1st at 5:30 in the Aviva Stadium. Join the Sea of Blue for this massive inter-provincial clash. Tickets on sale now at leinsterrugby.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Alright, Gavin Cummiskey is with us to talk to us about the Republic of Ireland against France. Kick-off is at 7:45 tonight. Gavin, have you picked your probable team in the papers today? I haven't had a chance to check it yet.
I have, yeah. There's a couple of either-ors though. Looked like Seamus Coleman trained for the first 15 minutes yesterday, so if Seamus is declared fit, I think he might bump Darragh O'Shea out of the team. Otherwise, it's McLean comes in for O'Dowda, Egan Collins, Doherty, Bazunu, Cullen, Knight, Malumbi, Evan Ferguson, and I think Ogbenny's legs up front as well to run all night.
It's interesting, right? Because Vinnie Perth has been in for the last couple of weeks, and he thought that Adam Ida, if he was fully fit, was actually going to be the first choice for the games, and that actually there might be a sense of perhaps holding Evan Ferguson in reserve, which, you know, we were talking to him, it's like that is a tricky high wire act to play when you're a manager who has very fragile confidence, particularly from the press pack, and if you were not to pick your Wunderkind for the big game. It would just seem like a kind of, very risky high wire act.
That's crazy. I don't think that'll happen. I think Stephen Kenny's in a good position at the moment. No matter what happens tonight, I still think he's in a good position. Like, you saw what happened to the Dutch. It's very hard to see how Ireland can avoid a 4-0 defeat, but there's no, like, a 2-0 defeat or a 3-0 defeat. Like, most teams in the world would have to swallow that. I think, honestly, back in December when Kenny was plotting this game, and with Keith Andrews and John O'Shea, I do think that they considered Adam Idah as the perfect outball guy up front on his own, with maybe Ogbeni or Obafemi off him. He was beginning to play for Norwich again. I watched one Norwich game and he wasn't playing well. Kenny says Adam Idah's been consistently in the Norwich team. He hasn't been a couple of 90 minutes in a row, but one goal since December. Idah is fit again now. He has recovered from that foot injury, and I think before Evan Ferguson starts scoring goals and start proving himself to be a Premier League caliber striker, it was going to be Ferguson off the bench with Idah. But then that's all changed since he started going on this goal spree since New Year's Eve against Arsenal. So, God, if he held Ferguson tonight, he really needs a result.
Yeah.
You can't leave him out, can you?
No, I don't think so. There was the other thing that Vinny was talking about was perhaps like having a box of 4 midfielders, and so you could play Knight and Malumbi and Cullen and maybe Smallbone or somebody else in that role. So it's actually it's 2 10s behind Ferguson as an outlet. So you don't actually play a second striker, and then you have Ogbeni in reserve. And you have Obafemi in reserve if you want it, but that you've got a lot of hard-running midfield power to try and counteract what France are going to do tonight, which is obviously very, very difficult because they're so bloody good.
Yeah. That's not a bad idea, and that wouldn't be alien to this squad, because before they went 3-5-2, that was the 2 10s behind the striker was how they played against, say, Serbia at home, Portugal at home, and that was how they showed out, and Idah was very good in that system. But I think 3 in midfield is enough. Well, this is the thing. Do you play, like, Ferguson is a kind of a 9-10, so that's why Obafemi has a chance. But tonight's a night for work and running and athleticism and staying focused in a game. Obafemi, I think, is definitely the future of Irish football, but I don't know if he's the man for tonight. I don't see how he hasn't shown enough for Burnley to convince me that against the Champions League, fully stocked Champions League 11, he's going to make an impact. So I think it's like Kenny's right when he plants his flag and goes, we're not going to go backwards. We are a team that will. He said he was Ireland one of the best passing teams in Europe, which is plainly not true. I think he kind of created a rod for his back there with that comment yesterday. But otherwise, it was great to hear what he said. It was really bullish. It was really a kind of a battle cry going, we're going to stay true to our principles that we've developed over the last 2.5 years. If there is a box in midfield, if it is a 3-2-2-1 system, that's fine. They've done it before. They only kind of went away from that in the last year. So yeah, that's understandable.
When you say, Gavin, it's a night for work and running, it's almost like a blueprint for Will Smallbone's game, and he'd probably consider himself unlucky not getting into the team tonight given his performance against Latvia, albeit being a friendly. But I guess the problem there is, who do you leave out?
Yeah, I think it's ideal for. I don't think it's ideal for Will Smallbone simply because he's the kind of player that needs to be on the ball, and I just don't see how he gets on the ball with Rabiot, Tugameni. And even Griezmann, see the way Griezmann created the first goal by slipping back in and putting a slide tackle on that poor Ajax midfielder. Knight and Malumbi are running machines week in, week out. Granted, in League One for Knight and Malumbi in the Championship, but they will run themselves into the ground. They have Josh Cullen then sitting in behind them, and that does bring us a relative security. But I was lucky enough to go to a couple of France games during the World Cup in Qatar, and I watched the Australia game in particular. Mbappe was like switched on from second one at the World Cup. It was as good. It was a revelation. It was as like a thrilling and excitement to see as you compare it to any other sportsman or any other sportswoman I've ever seen. Atkinson from Hearts was it was the right back against him for the France-Australia game. And Matty Cash from Aston Villa was the right back, and Kyle Walker then in the England game. And they were all doubled up. They were all protected every time. And even he still did that first goal he scored against the Dutch on Friday night there, where the slightly diagonal run and he just leaves people for dead. He still does that when he, like, Matty Cash is brilliant. You can find a couple of interviews, the Aston Villa fullback who's got a Polish grandfather. You can find a couple of interviews with him about how he, I watched him. I didn't watch the game. Dan McDonald was sitting beside me, and all I did was watch Matty Cash that night for 90 minutes. And Dan watched the match, and he was world class. He stayed with him. In the first 44 minutes, he dispossessed Mbappe clean and walked out twice. He got put in his ass once, and then on 44 minutes, he tried to foul Mbappe when he was setting up the goal for Giroud. And again, I don't think Giroud will start. I think Kolo Muane is another one who's going to come in, and he's going to retain his place. But you can do whatever. What I'm trying to say is you can do whatever you want with Mbappe. If you stock up too heavily there, Griezmann will switch to play, and they'll do you on the other side. Now, Dembele's not playing, but Coleman looks okay. So it does. There's no need for hope like that tonight. It's just about you just want to see Ireland play above themselves. But they've never had this test. Kenny's kind of pushed to. We had Portugal and Serbia. This is a whole other different level. It's not comparable. Yeah,
just for anybody who's forgotten the World Cup, obviously they beat Australia 4-1 and they beat Poland 3-1, and on those, you know.
And like Matty Cash, I swear to God, go back and watch this. He had the game of his life at right back, and Mbappe got 2 goals and an assist and destroyed him 2-3 times, and there was about another 6 occasions where he was just world class. We're reading the play and tackles. So
the range of outcomes here does include us getting absolutely annihilated. Like, you know, there is a possibility. Mbappe's talking about trying to break the 41 goals to catch Platini in the Roll of Honour as he tracks down those records, and he seems to be very enthusiastically chasing those records as opposed to just being kind of manufactured. So it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that they absolutely kill us tonight.
Yeah, but there's not beyond the realms of possibility that they could have beaten Argentina like 5-3 in the World Cup final. You know, this is just something
that's giving me comfort, Gavin. Is it?
Yeah. Look,
a bit more optimism, lads. Come on.
No, I think it's important to set the scene.
Yeah,
here.
Of course.
Like, this isn't a back to the wall heroic 0-0 likely. That's very, very unlikely.
Like he could score 5 goals and catch Griezmann. But when I was writing a preview about this game, you have to deal with reality, and then you have to deal with the greatest Irish qualification performances ever. And none of them, we didn't see them coming. Like I remember September 2001, we didn't see that performance against the Dutch coming. What we knew was we'd be competitive, and the Netherlands would have to earn their right to go to that World Cup. We didn't know that Roy Keane was going to cut through the back of Overmars and destroy a future Barcelona midfield in Kaku and Van Bommel. You know, we didn't. It just came. It happened. We knew there was the grounds there for a performance, and I think that the grounds are there for an Irish performance tonight. But one of the greatest ones we've ever seen at Lansdowne Road, like something that, like, I know that Kenny, the management showed the players the 77 and 81 wins, Liam Brady's lovely little goal in 77, and Robinson's winner, the 3-2 win in 81. But like that was Platini's team, and this team is better. Like let me put it this way: I'm going too on much about their attack. I thought their solidity, the Dutch had chances, and Ireland will create chances, but Marcel Desailly has gone on record saying this is the greatest French defence he's ever seen. And he played in that 2000 back four with Laurent Blanc. I thought their back four looks really, really tight. Konate, Upamecano, our Milan centre-back, like they haven't missed Varane. That's probably the scariest thing. So yeah, we have to be realistic, but special Lansdowne days do come from people like me saying they've no chance in 10 hours before kickoff, you know. So, you know, there is the possibility for it to happen. And as Kenny said, the atmosphere will be electric. But he also said we're one of the better passing teams in Europe.
I think the atmosphere will be very good. I think that the crowd will definitely get behind them. And I think that, you know, we can hope. One thing you're talking about, if Coleman plays, it's in the 3 as opposed to the right wing back. Is that your instinct at the moment?
Well, for starters, he's played in the 3. Well, no, at the end of last year he played right wing back, but he's got a thigh strain, so you're not going to play him right wing back. And also, he's proven himself decent there in that centre of the three. Also, he's such an influential figure. If he did get through that training session we watched yesterday, we saw 15 minutes of it. He got through the other 45 minutes of it. I just thought Darragh O'Shea's distribution was poor. I thought Bama Delhi was poor against Latvia. He looked a bit rusty. He was struggled in the air. But O'Shea, who's normally such a good passer, you have to judge him on what we saw. And Egan comes in, is nailed on. Nathan Collins is nailed on. And Darragh O'Shea probably is a favourite, but if Seamus Coleman is fit, you just can't go into a game of this magnitude without someone of his experience. And he's having a grand season. He's playing Premier League all the time because that young Scottish right back at Everton is injured. So, yeah, I'd go with Coleman. I think you have to lean into all your strengths here for this one, every single one of them. And Will Smallbone, yeah, you make a good point about him, but just this is a whole different level of quality. And Will Smallbone's all about, you saw how great he was just in that little inside right channel. Yeah, maybe, but I think Malumbi and Knight, because Ireland just won't have the ball.
Maybe.
Although the French do let you have it a little bit, so we'll see if we are as of the standard European level passing football nation tonight. We'll find out pretty quickly.
It's grand. It'll be 0-0 with 10 minutes left, and Mikey Johnston will come on and take them on with a few runs, and that'll be grand. But
Mikey Johnson got name checked by Deschamps, by the way, by Deschamps last night. It was like the circus is definitely in town. I was in the Aviva yesterday about 6:00, and Mbappe was up first, and they tried to do a rehash. The French media tried to do a rehash of that his State of the Nation last Thursday, where they were throwing political questions at him and all that. And they were going, "Oh, so you're up again? You're not going to share the leadership?" And he was like, "Look, I'm the captain. My manager has asked me to come forward." He switched into English, perfectly fluent English. He's ready to break America in 2026. But Deschamps, neither of them fell into the old trap. You know, the British style. We expect Ireland to be aggressive and strong. They said the opposite. Both of them were briefed on that one, not to give motivation to the crowd straight away or no motivation to the team. They said Ireland are not just a robust team anymore. We watched them. They played three at the back, and they're both their eyebrows raised when they were saying this. And they said they know they're good. And Deschamps name-checked Ferguson, and he name-checked Mikey Johnson. So they definitely watched. They're definitely working off the Latvian blueprint for how they're. Mbappe said he only watched the first half, but I think that's enough, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I contain a multitude. All are good and all are bad. So we can expect plenty of shots from outside the penalty area.
Oh, definitely, yeah. But also, like the goal that we concede is the goal that Tukameni scored, the first goal against England in the World Cup quarter-final. So that's the one. And I thought the gas thing about that was England built their structure around not allowing that shot to happen. As in, Kyle Walker there's a really interesting piece by David Walsh on the eve of the World Cup final in the Sunday Times, where buried in it. It was really about Southgate saying, "I'm going to stay on as England manager." But buried in it is a piece about how Kyle Walker was told, and this is Kyle Walker, the greatest right back of all time, was told not to cross halfway, and that was their plan from Mbappe. And the one time he crossed halfway, the system broke down. They went down the right, they got the ball across, and Tukameni had a look at goal. So they consider what we consider like unbelievable goals to beat us in the last 2-3 years from Azerbaijan, like Armenia, Latvia. They consider that like something that they want to create. They want to have a look at goal from that distance. But we only concede those goals against minnows, so it's great.
Yeah. Bazunu will save them tonight. Gavin, good stuff. Enjoy the game. Thanks a million.
See you, lads.
Gavin Cummiskey, the Irish Times, there, giving us a preview, the tab of the morning to you. Fergie time.
That's pretty good. That's not bad. I've heard worse. No, I'm having that one. Yep.
In fairness, they're having a good morning at the Sun. The Clux gone back again.
Oh,
good timing.
Very good. See what they did there.
Although it did spring forward, fall back. You know,
that's fair.
Okay,
semantics.
A little bit of. We're going to give them a little bit of artistic license this morning. It's 8:28. You're watching OTB AM, or you're listening to us on OTB Sports Radio. We're live every morning with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Let's get the view from France. I'm delighted to welcome back to the programme Jean-Philippe Leclair of L'Equipe. Jean-Philippe, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning.
What are your expectations for what might happen as France play Ireland tonight?
It's going to be tough because every time we go to play to Ireland, it's always tough. I remember we won 1-0 back in 2000. It was 2009 November for the infamous qualifying for the World Cup in South Africa. It was 1-0 Anelka. Even when I remember 2005 with Zidane and in Croke Park, I think, and we only won 1-0. So we're optimistic, but we know it's not going to be a walk in the park.
It was very much a walk in the park on Friday night against the Netherlands. What did you learn from that? Was that what you expected, or was that a bit of a surprise?
Not at all, because it's the first time since the 50s that the French national team, that the Les Bleus were leading 3-0 after 20 minutes, and it was not against Luxembourg or Malta. No disrespect to those teams, but it was against Holland. So nobody really expected that, and it was a big surprise. It was just to the fact that apparently the Dutch team, they had food poisoning the night before, and some major players were not on the pitch. But the French were quite impressive, and the way that we attack right from the beginning, and the pressure that we were able to put on the Dutch defense. Yeah, that was a really good game. One of the best I've seen from France since a long time. Even during the World Cup, I don't remember we played at level. Maybe the last 20 minutes in the final, or some periods of times against England, but it was a very good game on Friday.
I think when we heard last week, Jean-Philippe, about the aggro between Griezmann and Mbappe over the captaincy, we're thinking from an Irish perspective, oh, this is brilliant. The French are fighting with each other and there's going to be controversy over the armband, but it appears from the body language on Friday night that, Griezmann and Mbappe get on just fine. Is the captaincy issue a non-runner?
Yeah, as long as we're winning, there's no issue. But if we don't win tonight, and if we lose, it's going to be an issue again. So, it's always the same old thing with football. But it's true that there was a bit of controversy last week because Griezmann, being a senior player, he was expecting to get the captaincy. But Mbappe, yes, and I think Mbappe has been very clever on that because he knew that his relation with Griezmann all over the years have been, ups and downs, Russian mountains, we can say like this. And so Griezmann was very diplomatic. And Griezmann is player. Of course, he's got a huge ego, like all the star players. But he's also very clever, and he knows that he needs a good Griezmann for him, for the team. So he did a lot of gestures toward Griezmann. They had a talk together before the game, and the first goal is brilliant because it's Mbappe giving the ball to Griezmann, and there was some speculation even in France that if he hadn't been captain, maybe Mbappe would have kept the ball and tried to score himself. But it was a perfect beginning for his captaincy, and we hope he's going to be like this for tonight and for the rest of the qualifying.
Colm Moani obviously got the opportunity to start the game. Was it his dummy that allowed Mbappe to run through and score? I'm not sure if it was. If it wasn't, it was a beautiful piece of skill. But he obviously fits the system really, really well. And there's no hangover for him personally from the World Cup final either.
No, because Griezmann. The problem was last year. It was more with his club, with Atletico Madrid, and it was with the French national team. He had some ups and downs with France, but once the situation was fixed with Atletico, it was a totally different player, and now he's one of the senior players in France, with the French national team, with Les Bleus, and there's a lot of respect for him for what he has done in the past, and I think every time he comes to play for France, you can see a great smile on his face, and his position on the pitch is very different from what it was when he started to play for France, where he was really up front. Now he's in the key of the game. All the games is going through him. It's like a kind of a box-to-box players with a lot of running, with brilliant tackling, which is very, very much Atletico-like. So it's really at the heart of the game. So there was a bit of a problem for his ego that is not the captain. But I think he has fully recovered from that.
What's the perception, Jean-Philippe, of this Irish team in France? I guess Evan Ferguson being the guy that everyone seems to be talking about. I know Mbappe and Deschamps were referencing Evan Ferguson as well in their pre-match press conferences. But what's the opinion of this Irish team over there?
Yeah, I mean, we did in L'Equipe today. We did an article about Ferguson because he's the brand new star of Ireland. But honestly, there's always a lot of respect for this team, and I don't think you can find anybody in France this morning who's going to tell you, it's only Ireland. We're gonna beat them easy, 3-4-0 tonight, no problem. Well, we don't expect it to be as tough as it was for rugby players a month ago. But it's never easy to win in Dublin. We know that for sure. So it will be a surprise if we win tonight by 2 or 3 goals. We expect a tough game. We know the Irish fans. They are among the best in the world, and so we know there's going to be a lot of pressure on our bleu tonight. So of course, when you look at the clubs that your players are playing for, a lot of them are playing for Division 2 championship in England. It's not like the clubs that the French are playing for. But, once on the pitch, it's a different story. It's not only a question of where you are playing during the week. It's only a question of the country you belong to, of the spirit, and we know, I can't remember an easy game against Ireland. Even during Euro home in Lyon, we only beat you 2-1 and you open the score. So it's always tough.
The decision that Deschamps made to come back and continue as the French manager, is it your assumption that will be for 4 years through to the World Cup in the United States, or do you think it's tournament by tournament?
I think it's going to be tournament by tournament because there was no controversy in France about the fact that Deschamps would keep his position because the French reached the final and we were very, very close to win the World Cup. But a lot of people thought, including myself and L'Equipe, that it would have been more reasonable for him to sign for 2 more years, not 4 more years. And this decision was only the decision of Noël Le Graët, the ex-chairman of the French Federation, and he has been kicked out of the presidency since that. So now, I mean, if Deschamps, even after what he has done for France already, which is huge, he has to do well during the Euro. We have to reach. We have to qualify first because it's not done yet, and far from that. And of course. And second, if we reach the final tournament, we have to. We are France. We have with this quality of players. You expect at least to reach the semi-final, if not the finals. And even Mbappe was very clear about it yesterday during the press conference. I mean, he said that France is here to win the Euro, no less than that. So I think. Deschamps has signed for 4 more years, but for me, it looks like more like 2 more years. And in the past, Deschamps is not the kind of guy who's going to say, I've signed my contract for 4 more years, and you have to stay for more years. If he doesn't do well during this Euro, I think he will be clever enough to say, okay, I'm done, and let's move to something else. So yeah, it's 2 more years, not 4 more years for me.
The strength and depth, Jean-Philippe, is something that's quite incredible in this French team as well. When you look at the likes of Olivier Giroud, for example, not getting into the starting team, this might sound like a ridiculous question to ask of a team that's just got to a World Cup final and just beat the Netherlands 4-0. But are there any weaknesses in this French team? Like when the decision is made by Deschamps game to game to pick the 11, are there any areas of the pitch where there tends to be a little bit of contention as to who is picked?
Yeah, I can tell you that if you keep it for yourself, if you don't tell
I won't tell Stephen Candy, don't worry.
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course, we even during the World Cup, not all games were perfect. Far from that. I think in defense, we have so many fantastic central defenders, but on the wings, it's not the same story, and we have a lot of problem on the right and on the left in defense. With the players that we are playing are usually central defenders that we have to play on the wings because we don't have natural talents. We have Theo Hernandez, but apart from him, I mean, the solution on the right, especially, are not. We have only very few. Lucas Dean is still a solution. One of the few natural right-left wing that we have. So it's not. It says a lot, I think. But in France, there's still a doubt for tonight about Coman because he was not very impressive on Friday nights. So we think that maybe Giroud is going to play number 9 and that Colomwani is going to move to the right. That's a possibility because Coman has been quite not very. I mean, he hasn't scored for his last 20 games with France, which is a lot in the dominant team. So there's still this doubt for tonight.
Okay, so that's one potential change. No sign of Camavinga being a starter yet, despite the fact he's playing brilliantly in the Champions League.
Who?
Camavinga.
Oh, Camavinga, yeah, Camavinga is that's the difference between Real Madrid and France because Camavinga is playing in midfield with Real Madrid when Tchouaméni is on the bench, and it looks like Deschamps trusts more Tchouaméni in the midfield. And he said at the beginning of last week, his first press conference, I think he said that he was more considering Camavinga as a defender. Which is a bit strange because even when he was playing for Rennes, he was more a midfielder and a midfield player. So but we have this. I mean, Tchouaméni was kind of good on Friday night, so I'm nearly 100% sure he's going to play tonight.
Okay.
But yes, we still have Camavinga as a potential joker in the midfield.
One last question for me. Zinedine Zidane currently, it always feels like he's a presence in French football, almost irrespective of what he's doing. And at the moment, he's not doing very much. What do you see in the near to medium term future for Zidane?
I think Zidane. I mean, of course, he was expecting he always said he wanted to coach the Les Bleus, and maybe he was expecting some problems from his ex-teammate Deschamps. To take the team after the World Cup, which didn't happen. So he was pretty. I mean, we have one reporter who knows him very well, and he's not in a hurry to take a team. So he's not going to rush to the next team without a coach. He's going to take his time. There's a possibility he's going to take a team for a club for this summer for next season. We don't know where exactly. There's always a possibility we'll come back another time to Real Madrid. If Ancelotti is leaving, that's the most obvious solution, I think. There's always this dream from the Paris Saint-Germain owners to have Zidane in Paris Saint-Germain, but I think it's never gonna happen as long as Nasser El Khelaifi will be the president of Paris Saint-Germain. I don't think he wants to coach in England because he always said he needs to speak the language, and he doesn't speak a very good English. So, and also Juventus, what's going to happen with Juventus? It's one of the clubs he would like to coach, but their future is really uncertain. So. Yeah, but he's not in such a hurry to take a team. He's Zinedine Zidane, He's not. He's not like the others. He's special.
Mm-hmm. He is not like the others. That is true. Jean-Philippe Leclair, always great to speak to you. Merci beaucoup.
Merci à vous.
Jean-Philippe Leclair of L'Equipe there, giving us his thoughts ahead of tonight. They're less confident of victory than we are confident of their victory.
Playing it down, isn't he? You have to wonder what game's been played there. But no, he's like. I guess his point is that historically they have been relatively tight games.
Yeah.
You know, and Ireland do up it for the big ones, don't they?
Yeah.
Like, I'd expect a much better performance than the Latvia game. And look, there's a difference in personnel as well. I mean, when you watch the French game the other night, you're like, this is ridiculous. Now, the middle of the park is going to be fascinating. How Ireland deal with the likes of Chouameni. I think the closer it gets to kick off, the more optimistic I'll be. Blindly optimistic, perhaps, as a Republic of Ireland fan, but that's the beauty of it. I mean, I'm not going to say we're going to get something from the game, but I'd love them to put in a performance that will give you some confidence for the Greece games, for example, in this group. Maybe the Dutch game at home.
1-0 in 05. Thierry Henry scored that goal. The French team that night. Okay, so the defence is Coupe in goals, Jean-Alain Boumsong, William Gallas, Willy Sagnol, and Lilian Thuram, who was still obviously class. Dorisu in midfield alongside Makelele, Patrick Vieira, Zinedine Zidane, Thierry Henry, Sylvain Wiltord.
It's not bad, is it?
Djibril Cissé came on for Henry after he'd scored, and our team wasn't bad though. We'd given Stephen Carr, Kenny Cunningham, Richard Dunn, John O'Shea, Damien Duff, Roy Keane, Kevin Kilban, Andy Reid, Robbie Keane, and Clinton Morrison. You take that team tonight?
You'd certainly take it. I think they'll look back on this French team in 10-20 years and you'll be like, well, that's outrageous.
Yeah, I think Camavinga's not in the starting lineup, can't get in. We see him more as a defender. Like, did you watch the game against Liverpool recently where he was like unbelievable? Yeah, all right. How is a question for our watchers this morning on YouTube? How are you feeling about it? Give us your predictions. Stick in the comments there and we'll get some of them over the next while. You need to be a subscriber. YouTube.com/off the ball. Hit subscribe and you can leave a comment on the live feed at 8:45. Colin Mullaney is with us. Colin, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, lads. How's it going?
It's an unbelievably busy weekend and plenty to look forward to this week. Hopefully it kicks off well.
I mean, the Allianz Leagues and everything took centre stage yesterday, and then you had loads of stuff happening with the golf was on late last night as well. I mean, it's a bit of funny sort of Allianz League campaign. I know you'll be chatting about it now in a few minutes. I think Galway Mayo in the final is interesting. 3 Connacht counties in the top 3 in Division 1. You've had the Donegal situation in Division 1, Monaghan pulling it out of the bag again yesterday. And then the hurling, I mean, it's hard to know where teams are at. Limerick Kilkenny will be a decent final, but what sort of stock they'll be placing on that, I'm not sure.
I think both Limerick and Kilkenny are confident enough that the league final is going to be a one-off, as in there's not going to be any negative impact from a defeat, so you can actually go for it if you want. In a kind of weird way. Like Kilkenny are definitely going to be coming out to the All-Ireland series. You think Limerick are definitely going to be coming out to the All-Ireland series. So in a weird way, it kind of frees them up to just go hell for leather for this 1 week.
Yeah, maybe. And I think Limerick looking possibly even better shape than they have been in recent seasons. The depth that they have is just unbelievable. And the Limerick Tip game on Saturday night was at a really good level. And you think Tip are playing really well. And then Limerick just put the foot on the accelerator and breeze past them and win it pretty comfortably in the end. So they look to be by a distance out in front of the chasing pack. In football, I think you've got a similar situation, as you say, where Limerick and Kilkenny can go for the hurling league final. Like Galway can probably have a cut off Mayo in the football league final, in that they have that little bit of a gap to potentially play Mayo again in the Connacht semi-final. And it's interesting to note some of the comments from some of the Galway camp that they don't have Division 1 medals in their dressing room, that it's something they'd like to get their hands on. So it'll be interesting to see how Mayo approach that final in particular, with Roscommon coming down the track.
The Sligo-Leitrim game looked like absolute mayhem, to be honest. And Andy Moran, rightly or wrongly, I think rightly perhaps, he was given out, I think there was 30 seconds maybe left on the clock towards the end of the game. I think there was maybe talk of Carabine taking too many steps for one of those late points, but like you see that in GA all the time. And then after the match he's given out as well about the schedule, which is probably a fair point.
The schedule is very difficult for both counties, in that New York are going to be looking at Leitrim as a very winnable game in the Connacht Championship, and London will look at Sligo as being a very winnable game, even more so now because Sligo only have a 7-day turnaround. Saturday for the league final and then playing London the following Saturday. So there are 2 matches really to watch, but for Sligo it's brilliant. Have to give Leitrim a lot of credit. They were 8 points down and they pulled it back to lead by a point heading into the closing stages, and credit to Sligo that they pulled it out of the bag. I think Sligo have a lot of grounds to be optimistic now about the future, with our under-20s won last year the Connacht Championship for the first time. The minors won the year before for the first time since I think 68. Summerhill College from Sligo Town were in the Hogan Cup final. St Attractas won the Connacht Championship at B level. So there's a lot of good stuff happening, and I think Tony McEntee and his management team have done a great job.
And Oisin McConville getting promotion in his first year with Wicklow, like that's
remarkable.
Well, the thing was that yesterday Sligo needed to win, I think, to bring Wicklow up with them. And whereas if Leitrim had won, I think Laois might have got promoted. There was I think Wexford even had an outside chance of promotion this weekend. So Division 4 is really, really tight. But that's the beauty of the league, isn't it? Where you have teams at the same level competing like that. And from what I can gather, there was a great crowd in Carrick yesterday, around 5,000, and a brilliant atmosphere. And obviously they could meet in the championship as well.
I'd have loved to have been able to see all these games. Do you know, I know GA League Tables had a brilliant kind of almost live update of the tables on his Twitter account, which was a brilliant service. But you'd love to be able to see some of them in Division 4 and even Fermanagh as well in Division 3. I wanted to watch Fermanagh Calvin. There's just a number of games you'd love to be able to see.
Yeah. I mean, we're surely getting there. Surely, are we still like multiple years away from that being realistic? At least TGR we're bouncing back and forth.
Yeah.
But even still, like I don't know, there's just a few little bits that need to happen before we can get the coverage that I think will actually kick the sense of the league on further. You know, it would have sucked in the casual viewer in a way that maybe it doesn't always. Loads of other stuff happening.
Yeah, lots happening. I mentioned McElroy last night. He actually coughed up a 2-hole lead with 3 holes left to play at the Match Play Championship to lose in his semi-final to Cameron Young. Sam Burns ended up as the winner there. He beat Cameron Young in the final, and McElroy beat Scotty Scheffler in the third place playoff. So obviously all eyes on the Masters now, coming up very soon indeed. Antonio Conte, of course, sacked last night, or left Tottenham last night by mutual consent is the word from the club officially. So he's gone from that job after 16 months in charge. You got the Cora Staunton news in the last little while. What a career that she's had, having gone down to Australia. Remarkable. I wonder, would she be tempted to come back to inter-county football with Mayo in the summer? Who knows?
Oh, I didn't even think of that. I just thought maybe club football, but maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Well, Stephen Cluxton's back with Dublin.
Hey, so why not?
Cora Staunton maybe with Mayo. It's a very open All-Ireland Championship as well, you would think, after the league campaign. So let's see what happens there. And elsewhere in football this weekend, speaking of the Mayo women's footballers, they retained their status in Division 1 of the league yesterday. Donegal going down after their loss in Letterkenny, and Galway and Cork will play off in the very Camogie League Division 1A final. That's after Galway's win over Cork yesterday by a single point.
All right, good stuff, Carl. Thanks for that. Lads. Frank says, I'm praying the Italian restaurant returns my booking for tonight is incomplete. I confuse my days. And Shifty Lad says, I'm not as nervous about tonight as I should be. We'll definitely put everything into it, and it might not be enough. It'll be Gibraltar and Greece that I'm bricking it for. And back to Frank says, eating a row of cheese and watching a hockeying will be too much for me. So you can always stick it on your phone, can't you? Depends on who you're with. That's the thing.
Optimism,
can you stick the phone on the, have a nice, and you may as well like make up for the fact that you're watching a hockeying?
I don't go to places where you eat cheese and wine. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know the protocol. Not posh enough.
Cheese is not posh.
It has
like French peasant food.
Oh, right, okay. Well,
made by farmers in the hills.
Brie, yeah, fair enough. Not a cheese man, not a cheese kind of guy.
So many to choose from. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition available now. We were talking about Andy Moore, and we talked about this more during the week. So Tommy was at the game, was doing the post-match, and they're absolutely raging about the scheduling, but specifically the impact that it's having on players' injuries. So here is the Leitrim manager, Andy Moore, and speaking to Tommy yesterday.
I would say is the scheduling is an absolute joke. It's like our schedule, it actually helps us that we didn't win in terms of scheduling for New York. We really wanted to win because we were prioritising the league a tiny bit more than the New York trip. But you look at them Sligo boys, they have to go up to Croke Park next week, and then they have to jump on a plane then on probably the Thursday or the Friday and go over to London and play a championship match on the Saturday. It leaves them wide open, and it like honestly now, and I'm not talking for Tony McEntee, if we were in the same situation, we'd have been jumping on the plane to New York. It's not fair. It's not fair on players in terms of try to prep. The amount of, like, I think Michael Dylan came out last week and said the amount of injuries. Like when I was in college back in the noughties, all the studies were about burnout and what we're going to do, and now we're just absolutely flogging our young players, our elite players, with games upon games upon games. And when this is all over, they go back to their clubs and play again. So someone has to shout stop, and I hope with the level of injuries now, the likes of Tom Parsons and these guys step up and say we're not allowing our players to do this again in 2024.
I think that's really interesting that Andy Moore is name checking Tom Parsons there, because obviously he has his number. They were teammates, and so he could have just spoken spoken to him, but he's decided to speak to him publicly through the media. So we'll definitely follow up on that over the course of the rest of the week. Anthony Moyles is with us to look back at the rest of the weekend's Gaelic football. We'll start with Division 1, I think. And
why not?
We've been talking about this a bit over the last few weeks. Like, some teams need a click of form and some teams need strength and depth, and other teams realise that nothing matters until the group stages this year.
Yeah.
So we don't know what we don't know in terms of periodisation and teams training through stuff. But Kerry, a bit flat, and concerns about the goalkeeper, and a few more question marks than maybe they would like at this stage of the year.
I don't think so. I think they were actually. I thought it was a great game. It was a really, really good game. You could see a marked difference in the speed of the game. It was. The intensity was good. I thought the referee did a good job, allowed it to flow. It probably was at a level higher than a challenge match level, with intensity wise and tackling and stuff like that. But speed, it was definitely at that kind of a middle of championship just kind of after one or two rounds, both teams going at it, loads of pace in it, lots of players coming back for Kerry. Gavin White started, O'Connor came off the bench. He was pretty ruthless, I thought, Jack O'Connor, in whipping a few lads early even and getting other guys on, but they showed, I thought, they had a real go at it, and it was a real battle of the heavyweights, to be honest with you, Ger. I thought the keeper was, I thought he was unfortunate for the goal. He probably should have just fisted it. He actually went to catch it, and because he went to catch it, his left hand hit the post and it just bounced out of his hand. Apart from that, I thought kickouts were fine. I think both teams just kind of conceded the kick out the first half.
16 of 16 with a couple of minutes left to go. The graphic showed up.
Yeah. So they were playing a +1 at the back. Obviously Galway were, and they obviously had a plan for Clifford. I thought Clifford was poor, actually. But Kelly showed you how to play Clifford, and the only way to play him is as soon as the ball breaks down, you go.
Yeah.
Like he joined the attack. I'd say he must have joined the attack. He could have joined the attack 40 times. He just literally went, and even out a couple of times when Clifford was beside him, like there was one little clip where Clifford's actually tracking him, and you're kind of thinking, okay, he's going to stop now. But he continues on, and he gets a hand pass, and he gets fouled for a free. He was like, it's the one thing. Sorry, I think his defending lacks a little bit at times, but as a +1 coming from that defence, when he goes extremely hard.
Kelly, you're talking about
Kelly, yeah,
okay. Best fullback in the country, probably at the minute, on form.
Well, I think in doing that, in what he gives you, because he never half commits to it. So as a forward line, you're nearly, because Kerry, I thought, were a bit surprised by it. Clifford obviously wasn't going to make those runs back. He made a few, but you don't want him all the way 60 yards from his own goal. So they allowed him to go, and Galway most definitely had a plan, which was, as soon as he goes, let's find him, because he didn't go down the right wing or the left wing, Ger. He kept it going straight down the middle, and he always added an option. And then, of course, he's smart enough when he gets into those areas that he just looks for, okay, where's the pass? And he's smart enough. He's he's an intelligent footballer, so he gets your head up and he passes the ball. So it's definitely something that people will mark and go, okay, this is how we put them under pressure, from a Clifford point of view.
Now, at some point, Kerry are going to just say, you just stay where you are.
They'll counteract it, yeah. So they'll get another player to tag him as he goes, So a half forward or something will observe and then click it up. But it's still hard enough to pick up. It's still, because you sometimes have to do it, because it will add an extra man. And if you're playing it well, it can be, a lot of teams do it. Just not many teams do it from a central point of view, from the three. They usually do it 2 or 4.
They've been called coming in under the radar so much that they're now like beeping heavily on the radar, on all radars. But Galway, So there's a free, or maybe it's a 40 with a minute of the 4 minutes of stoppage time on the clock, and Sean O'Shea decides, right, I'm going to stick it over the bar, we'll get possession back, and then they don't get possession back. That was like Dublin-esque at their peak from Galway at the end of the game.
They're very impressive at the moment, and if you watch, there's a couple of great scores they got where they're working off loads of angles, loads of runners.
Matthew Tierney had one of them,
And I think it's the one you're talking about in the first half. And if you watch, I rewound it 3 or 4 times just to see where he starts, and it's absolutely training ground stuff, but it's seamless. You know, it really is seamless. You wouldn't, like, unless you really observe it, you're like, okay, every single player there knew where they were going. It was just like a double cross, and Tierney just comes around, he gets the jump on the man, and as a defender never has a chance, because he just goes, he literally just waits for the option. You know, the defender's eyes get taken and he pops the ball over the bar. They're playing really, really good stuff, Galway. Cool. And they're I was looking at all the defences. So the top defence in the first two, or the top two divisions, are Derry. They've conceded at least 69 scores or something like this, which is ridiculously low. But Galway, I think, are second.
Right.
So they're really mean at the back now. You know, and people would have always said, and even when I played, it was always kind of nearly a shootout with Galway. You know, it was like, you score, we score, let's see how we go. You've got some great forwards, but your defence is a little bit...
Apart from the Kevin Walsh era, when they got slaughtered for being really defensive. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? There was
but Joyce is built on that.
Yeah,
you know,
in fairness,
Porrick is he's not a guy who's just done... A lot of managers will come in, you know, and they'll rip it up and just say, good luck.
Well, he did that at the start, and then there was a come to Jesus moment where he realised, actually, you know what, everything Kevin Walsh was doing wasn't bad, and they've married the two.
Exactly.
And that's worked out really well for them. And look, that shows great maturity from any manager who comes in and goes, I'm going to do it my way, and then has the humility to listen to what the players are saying and what the results are showing, and then to change it. So
there's a lot made of like the likes of Tom O'Callaghan and Maher as well coming into the team, but like to see Comer come off the bench with his bionic leg yesterday, you're like, well, this is an option. Straight away you could see that he was being used as an option for balls in, which is going to add an extra element to this team. Boost off and back, and they'll want, as we were saying earlier, they'll want a Division 1 title, like
big time. No. Absolutely they will. Yeah, because they need to get, well, not that they need to get, but it's another little tick, you know, as regards silverware. You know, it's not the be all and end all for them, but players back, Comer gets a score, you know, causes a bit of mayhem, but they're very... I always remember a few years ago where they were knocking on that door, they were a little bit light up front. You know, they'd one or two options, and it was kind of like, if we sort that out, you know, they don't have enough power and pace really to break us down. Now they've a bit of an ability coming from all over. They have loads of forward options, it seems. Lots of them.
I think the maturity that Shane Walsh has at this stage of his career to be able to play whatever way he's required to play, as opposed to... Obviously, it was complete Hollywood stuff in the All-Ireland final last year, but that's because all the rest of the forwards were bottled up. Now you feel like he can influence a game irrespective of whether or not he's at the absolute peak of his own powers, and that's been a long time coming. And everybody doesn't always get there who are blessed with his talents.
No, true, and I think they kind of tried to overplay him a little bit in the first half yesterday. They were looking for those popped balls in front of him, and Kerry were aware of it, and exactly as you say, so they just changed it up. And he changed it up, actually. He kind of started to come out and forage a bit more out around the half-forward line. I think, look, they have a very, very good management team. I think they're a smart management team. They can play it different ways with you. They're getting a bit more cynical. Much more cynical. They've a lot of big men around the middle who are very mobile and who can take scores. And, you know, but by the way, I know we're talking a little bit. I thought Kerry were equally as impressive.
Okay,
Kerry,
right. Let's get into Kerry then, because I wasn't sure if Kerry are one of those teams who literally have maybe 1.5 games where they're going to be at full pelt between now and the group stages, and it looks like their draw in the group stages is going to be relatively straightforward as well. So it's like they can plan for an All-Ireland quarter-final weekend and to be peaking for that.
Yeah, I think like they started off slow. The goal was a bad goal to concede, but at the same time, when they needed to up it and go through the gears, they did. Clifford had an off day, okay, from a forwards point of view. Paddy Clifford, I thought, was absolutely fantastic. Like, he got around the pitch. The amount of work he did. He was playing as a 12 yesterday, which I thought was interesting. So they were before playing him in kind of a 13 and then letting him forage out, doing that kind of quarterback role. But so he was much deeper actually this time. Like, he was picking up balls off the full back line. But he seamlessly just cuts through as he kind of slaloms up the field, and it's like no one can get a touch on him. Left foot, right foot.
What difference will that make in the summer if they were to do, because they're obviously trying this out for a reason, and maybe it's like, we want to get kilometres into your legs, we want to get you feeling the weight of the ball, and in summertime they go back to it. But maybe they don't. Maybe this is like, he's actually going to be a half forward, and some of the other players who we've been talking about maybe do make it into the team by the time.
Yeah, I know we've been. It's nearly every week we've been all kind of saying, okay, is that the next corner forward? Well, actually, I think if I was in a race now, I'm saying Tony Brosnan is the leader to get in. I'll tell you why. I'm not comparing him. I'm not saying he's Gooch, right? He has a lot to go to get to Gooch's level, but what he has is his ability to see a pass, and when he gets his head up. So the pass last week, where he does the no-look pass, where he swings it across with his right foot, right to left. He did another one yesterday, where he's just, actually I think he gives it to Paddy Clifford. All the defence is kind of, everyone is looking this way, everyone is moving with him, and then he just switches it back. I think in Croke Park, with some room around him, so I'd say he's the one to come out to centre forward if you get me, to kind of go around there. Shawnee O'Shea will do his robust style out around there, and Clifford will drop deeper and will supply the balls, and then he'll have that ability, and then they'll isolate Clifford, who will have the ability to move left or right on you as a full back line. And if you have someone, I think O'Shea's kind of always his MO has been get it and move, whereas Brosnan is get it and just slip and look for a pass. And I think that's one thing that they're missing, that quick ball in, but it's a smart ball.
So it's a good combination to have, and also it gives you a deeper playmaker now as well.
Correct.
So you don't lose anything by not having Paddy Clifford doing that role, because you've got somebody who can do similar.
Exactly.
Or evolve into somebody who can do similar, and now you have Paddy being able to do that from the half-back line.
Well, what have most teams done with Paddy? They've put a man on him. So Hessian did it with Mayo. They just put him on him and said, right, wherever he goes, you go. So that's okay. So if you want to follow me all into my own full back line, that's okay, because I'm now bringing you all the way up with me, and actually we'll get Gavin White or we'll get Tom O'Sullivan to go.
Yeah.
I'll play a bit of a rope-a-dope with you. So I won't really, and then I can get onto the ball as the ball comes up the field, because we actually have a player up there who can now pass just as good as me. So I think Brosnan is the guy who is, for me, if he continues in the way, like I heard Jack O'Connor saying last week, I'm not surprised by that. He's a very talented player. We just need him to get more confident. That's the type of thing that I think that they need. And another weapon for the rest of the county or the country to deal with.
I don't know where you lads wanted to go next, but the Tyrone Armagh game was fascinating for me, because you take out the relegation even, but like Tyrone kind of coming back into it. But Kieran McGeeney, I don't know how he's going to be feeling this morning, because relegation for Armagh is probably disastrous when you look at some of the counties. It's probably his last year, let's be honest. I don't know.
So the one, I love McGeeney as Kildare manager. I thought it was great from not being relevant. They were suddenly relevant, and you see what's happened ever since, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely would attribute a lot of the success of that period to him. When you talk to anybody who was involved with it, and they say the same. But he was never that interested in the league. I always thought if Kildare were going to make the breakthrough, that they needed to do a Monaghan on it and stick in, learn to manage games, learn to be a Division 1 team, so that everybody who comes to training every week is always at Division 1 standard. And so the legacy of that era was that we were a Division 2 team and have been a Division 2 team basically ever since, with occasional up and down.
Yeah.
The new Roscommon. And if Armagh were going to be serious contenders year in, year out, then that would have been a good thing for them. But he doesn't care about that. He's never cared about it. And so I don't think he's that worried about the fact that they've been relegated. I think he's more worried about the fact, as he says, that they've lost a lot of close games in the last 10 minutes. So
that's what they have done.
Something a bit weedy.
Well, they've lost a lot of close. So the last two games, like the Galway game, was a bit of a sickener for them. That was a game I thought they should have scored more in the first half. Then they were playing against a Gael the second half. They couldn't contain Galway, and they got bet by 2 points. They got beaten by 2 points yesterday. They got bet by a goal from Armagh, and they got bet by a point, I think, against, who was the last one? The other one, can't remember, but they were bet by a point. So they've lost 4. By really, you could say 2 by 2 scores and then 2 points each. I think they've been desperately unlucky. But I think they've been they've kind of written their own downfall to a certain degree, from being a team last year that was swashbuckling, kicking the ball, very offensively, or kind of ordinated, really, really going at the jugular, to a team now that has kind of gone, we're nearly a little bit afraid of it. I know people are saying he needed to tighten up, but I think they've overly tightened.
We were talking to Maurice Brosnan about this on Friday, and he was making the point that the transformation in style is very marked, and that actually there's a significant change towards a shorter game than the long game they were playing. Part of me wonders, again, you're in the league, you're like, we're going to do this, we're going to perfect this, but we have the other game plan to go back to when it comes to the championship, so that over the course of the group stages, we'll need both of these styles to get to an All-Ireland quarter-final. And then if we're going to beat Derry, or if we're going to beat Galway or Mayo or Dublin, then we need more than one thing in our armoury. Because last year they were very reliant on somebody doing something miraculous to get them back into games or to change the pattern of games. So
yeah. And they were kind of reliant a bit on that. Remember that quick early ball, the O'Neill lads into Rian O'Neill, him doing something brilliant with it. Which, again, I've seen people say, they're playing him like a Murphy and that they're allowing him drift out. They know what he can give you at full forward.
And if Rian O'Neill was fit yesterday, maybe they get the draw and maybe they're a Division 1 team next year.
Correct.
I know, there's only 2 points in it.
Yeah. Look, I think he will be disappointed in the fact that now he'll probably look at it and say, well, are we in a situation where we kept it very tight? So what was our defensive structure like? Okay, I didn't look at the actual stats on them, but they're probably top 5 or top 6 over the first 2 divisions, I would imagine, because I don't think they got blown out in any games.
No.
So they kept it relatively tight. But I just think you're right. Again, Kieran's a smart guy. Okay, he's a good backroom team. They're going to be able to decipher what exactly they need and when they need it, and who. And also, I think they're tailoring for certain teams. Like if you remember the Kerry game, they definitely factored that one in. They were kind of saying, "Listen, this is potentially. So what do we need to do to try to stop these guys?" Yeah. So they went ultra defensive. They did the same for Galway. Yeah. So I think. But I think I said it last week. It got a bit of paralysis by analysis. It's hard as well when you don't have these guys 7 days a week. Okay, so it's hard to overload stuff. You need sometimes just that natural kind of instinct and that natural game plan to come to the fore.
Yeah.
But I think they'll be okay. They'll pick themselves up. They'll be okay. They'll be ready for championship. But it's later on that they're aiming for.
It suddenly becomes a high wire act again for them after a bad league campaign. If Ulster goes bad, confidence before the round robin would be very low. But
after the first 2 games, they beat Monaghan away. I remember in the first game in Blaney, and I think the Mayo draw was the next game. So after 2 games, you're thinking, well, Armagh have 3 points. They're going to be looking for a Division 1 final here. They're fine staying up.
Yeah. And also, you know what, you don't like hearing these rumours, WhatsApp rumours and all this stuff going on. I didn't get too much into it, but you just don't want to hear that.
No, it's suggestive of a circus, and now they all showed up with shiners yesterday. There were 5 of them had shiners, including McGeaney.
What was that about?
I don't know, and he wouldn't say. So I mean, like if you're going to create a bit of mystery,
exactly.
I presume it's something to do with him doing BJJ, and it was like,
what's that
John
camp?
Kavanagh punched him or something.
07, the South African rugby team went to the camp.
Oh
for
yeah,
the World Cup
with
vibes of
the army.
Yeah, mad stuff.
I can't murder or something. It was going. Cluxton. A big deal, not a big deal, just a good sign that you're managing resources properly when there's depth chart issues at goalkeeper?
There are, like Evan Comerford is injured. I believe, he's on the way back. He should be back, I would say, in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So he will add, obviously, to it. I think so. It's weird. The goalkeeper is a weird spot. You can play like in the Premiership or in soccer. You can play till 40
Dino's
odds.
Still playing.
Yeah, exactly. But goalkeepers are a certain type. Cluxton will keep himself fit. There's no doubt about that. Does he have the ability, the agility, the strength, the nuance? Is it someone that they can trust within the camp? The problem with bringing fellas in, championship teams, you always do the old A's versus B's, but then you'll also have a couple of A and others dropped in, kind of who are doing well during the club season or whatever it was. That was the old way. So you get 4 or 5 lads to come in on a Saturday afternoon, and the big question mark was if there was a guy who was a real, standout, but could you trust him? And what's his demeanour like around the group? That's box ticks for Cluxton.
Yeah.
But, because Cluxton was never about him. So he's never going to walk in there and go, it's all about me. And so Farrell is going to know that he will seamlessly slip in if he needs to, but he will also have an aura and a presence within the dressing room.
Yeah. I mean, suddenly the dressing room has a lot of knowledge back in. So we were having this debate earlier on about, he's not coming back to stay on the bench. I think that he may well be coming back to be a player who is ready if called upon, but is not first choice. It'd be difficult to drop David O'Hannon after the league campaign he's had.
Absolutely, yeah, and he's played really well.
So Cluxton would need to be unbelievable in training and in challenge matches for that to happen.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think, even if he was, he would have to be. If you were marking him out of 10, O'Hannon would have to be down around 3 or 4, and Cluxton would have to be 10 out of 10 at every. For me to kind of go, as a management team, we put him in, because I actually think it disrupts it too much by putting him in. So then someone will ask, well, then why have him there? Well, you have all the other reasons to have him there. His experience, his know-how, his demeanour, his personality, in that he'll help O'Hanlon rather than come in. Like some fellas who come back, they're just trying to cut the legs off you, get rid of you. He'll actually help him. He'll help him along the way. He'll probably say to him, listen, and not in an arrogant way. He's not that type of fella. He might just, he'll offer up his knowledge and his experience and he'll say, look, maybe try it this way or whatever it is.
Also potentially a future Dublin manager, and is there like a sense of like them handing this on in some way?
I doubt they're even thinking about that, Ger, to be honest. That's I would say Farrell knows we're under pressure with a goalkeeper. Do we bring a belter in from some place that we don't really know? We've seen him play. He's been in a few challenge matches. Or do we go back to the tried and tested? Yeah. And do we go back to a guy? They probably know Comerford's coming back as well in another few weeks. I think the injury's being managed now, so it's probably just at the last kind of degree of it. So they're probably saying, well, listen, he's a good guy to have around again in the dressing room. And it's that leadership thing. Like, we're talking about leaders. Like, with another Division 1 team that are now Division 2, Donegal, you talk about leadership. And Jesus, yesterday, they were absolutely putrid.
Yeah.
Putrid, like Roscommon. Roscommon coming into the championship game against Monaghan, and we were debating this. Do you want to be in a Division 1 league final? Where's the mentality going to be? Roscommon would not want to read too much into that yesterday, because Donegal's second half were just literally
20 of the 21 points I think were from play for Roscommon. It was ridiculous.
No, Donegal, there was so much. If you watch it, talk about a lack of fight, a lack of effort.
And no bounce from the bit where they're involved in the removal of the manager. You expect the team at that stage to
give something. The question I had for you lads was, in Leinster, Liam Jackson's goal for Louth was brilliant. They showed some signs of a team that could be the number 2 team in Leinster, but getting to that Leinster final now all of a sudden for Kildare and Meath is huge.
Oh, it's massive.
I mean, they're playing the Dubs in the semi, so...
Well, sorry, they're not going to make it regardless. Sorry,
unlikely.
Ger, of course. But the likes of Louth play Westmeath, I think, in a quarter-final in Leinster, so there's some big games there.
Well, there's potentially Louth-Meath semi-final.
Right,
Tommy has them second as the second best team in Leinster at the moment. I can't make a case that's Kildare better than them. They were in the same league as them. They played all the same opponents and they finished behind them.
No, I can't. You look at it. I thought they were never going to win that game. I thought always Dublin were in control, but they had a couple of goal chances that I think would have made it a little bit more interesting. And again, they've lost a lot of really good players. Some of their best players they've lost over the last number of weeks. But they're very well set up. You can see that. But they'll learn from it. Mickey Hart and Devlin will learn from that yesterday against Dublin. Of course, the last lads are the Houdini boys.
Sorry, of course.
We just need to go there.
I'll leave that.
But I
you wanted a bit of posturing this morning, at least.
I have nightmares about Monaghan, Ger, and it still
05?
gets me. Yes, 05. Like, I mean, this is where this. I don't know what it is.
That was the greatest day of my life, by the way. Division 2 league final, if you don't remember. Paul Finlay lobs the ball in, Monaghan 2 points down, last kick. Anthony's on the pitch.
He said it.
Sean Boylan up against Banty. It was.
I don't know what it is. There must be a relic buried in Monaghan, because literally since then, and it's probably before then, but there was 5 of us on the line that day. Paul Finlay, I think we were 2 up.
You were 2 up.
They had to go for goal with the last kick. There was 5 of us on the line, which included myself, Darren Fay, Mark Ward. I think David Gallagher was the keeper, and some of the cumulative height of it was probably about 60 or 70 foot, right? The ball comes in, Wardy. Sorry about this, Wardy.
I got a chill when you said Mark Ward's name there.
He puts the hand up, calls for it, and instead of catching it, he fists it. It slices off the top of his fist and straight into the back of the net. And
Still on
win
YouTube.
By a point. Yeah. Wardy gets Monaghan Player of the Year that year, and I think he did. He still got freedom of
Monaghan town. Yeah, we had a civic. We genuinely there was a civic reception after that game in Monaghan because.
But that has been the start of it. I cannot believe. Well, sorry, we did say it last week, and by the way, I don't think we disagreed with you.
No, you didn't for sure. No,
because Mayo put out.
I did actually. I thought they were gone. I thought they were going to be gone, but
it did help. It did help with Mayo's selection. But you know what? You can only beat what's in front of you. And fair play to you.
Right, Anthony, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers. Anthony Mull's with us this week, looking at the weekend's Gaelic football. It's 17 minutes past 9. Slightly later, we've got Alan Quinlan up next talking to us about the Sunday paper. About the weekend's rugby. Camp Staldrad was the South African camp. On the OTB Podcast Network today, Republic of Ireland players speaking ahead of tonight's game. All their press conferences from during the week. The best of the GA interviews from the weekend, post-match included. And Brian O'Driscoll in conversation with Rena Buckley. It's a brand new series that we have. Make sure you tune in for that. Follow OTB across all our social channels and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network. Alan Quinlan's next.
You're listening to OTB AM. The Football Pod.
Even if that's not the case, just the fact that they believe that he's the coach 100%, is unbelievably powerful. Then if the fact that he is as well is the cherry on top. But once you get that buy-in, no matter what he says in training, we are doing that to the best of our ability, and whatever he says, we're taking it onto the field. Like, that's the buy-in that sometimes coaches, if there's any bit of doubt, they don't get that.
Subscribe to the Football Pod wherever you get your podcasts.
The Heineken Champions Cup is back. Leinster take on Ulster in the round of 16, Saturday, April 1st at 5:30 in the Aviva Stadium. Join the Sea of Blue for this massive inter-provincial clash. Tickets on sale now at leinsterrugby.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
We could have done a rugby version of the Gillette Labs performance rankings, and I think you probably would have had Leinster, Connacht and Ulster in the green, but there would have been red held exclusively for the Irish women's team and Munster over the weekend, Alan. We can start with the bad, rather, and we can finish with the good. Will we start with Munster?
It's your call now.
That first half performance by Munster was so disappointing because there'd been such great signs of an uptick in form, of bodies coming back, of a real sense of, okay, we know exactly what we need to do. Our destiny for the rest of the season is in our own hands. Let's go and start winning games, particularly against the opponents that they were facing. And they did not show up.
They didn't, and it was a real kind of eye-opener for that group of players. I think their attitude wasn't right either. I think, players will come out maybe and say, yes, it was, and we were focused and we trained well all week and stuff like that. But if you're off a little bit of a couple of percent each player, and maybe there seemed to be a lot of looking around and for waiting for other players to do it, I wouldn't over panic. I think the reality is that if they come up against a very, very strong, powerful team, that they are short in certain areas, probably most notably in the front row, the depth chart. Look at what Leinster were able to put out Friday night in Michael Milne, John McKee, Ala Lato, and the level of performance with all the props in front rows they're missing. So there's a depth issue there.
Kilcoyne started and got taken off at half time.
Yeah, it was poor.
Back from the Ireland squad.
He was, and I thought that he did really well for Ireland during the Six Nations. Looked to have a bit of strength and power, and he really good carries back. For some reason, maybe, I don't know, he didn't really have a good first half at all. He was up against Ander Fagerson, who's a really experienced, strong scrummager. So first thing, Glasgow really good. Picked a lot of strong players. Looked at this game and said, we win this game, we most probably have a home quarter final. So they front loaded the team. Very good coaching set up there, and they looked like a real team right across the board the other night. Munster lost all the collisions. They were falling off tackles. They were slow and pedestrian. And unlike them, to be fair, Ger, we've given them a lot of credit here in the last 3 months, and rightly so. Since that South African game, they'd played 13 and won 10, lost 3, 2 to Toulouse and 1 to Leinster. There's no shame in that. This is the one, and it was a run of 3 games between Osprey Scarlets and Glasgow. And I was kind of saying it back in January, stating the obvious. You win those 3 games, go to Benetton, win away in the end of January, and win the 3 home games, and you turn your whole season around. From a league point of view, they would have been looking at top 4. Now they've a mountain to climb going to South Africa, and but like I said, learning curve. They've got to look at that and say, where were they wrong in the first half? And if they analyse it, they were really sloppy, poor. Set piece was bad, very porous defensively, and this isn't just like the last game against the Scarlets. They conceded 6 tries in that game. They conceded 5, so that's 11 tries in 2 games. I saw someone tweeting the other day, it's record points conceded by a team since 2001-2002 season at home. So, and up to that point, their defence was really good all season. They were up near the top 2 or 3 with points conceded, but not good. Not a good night for him.
Like just for anybody who didn't see the team, the pack was Kilcoyne, Barron, Salanoa started, John Klein and Finning Wycherley, Jack O'Donoghue, who captained the team, John Hodnett and Gavin Coombs. Like, Hodnett and Coombs were supposed to be in Ireland, you know.
And both of those guys played pretty well. John Hodnett was outstanding around the field as regards his work rate, his energy, the tackles he was making.
Even in the first half?
Yeah, he was still flying around the place. Coombs, probably not. He came and played better in the second half. But there's out of the rest of them, you know, you're surprisingly, they all seem lacklustre and second best to the physical stakes. And Glasgow were really up for this game. There was a little bit of bite to it. And as I said, they really targeted this. So mentally a real learning curve for them. But they are short with depth. It's not, I'm not saying Dermot Byrne, Dave Kilcoyne, Rome Salanoa are replace the 3 of them with 3 others and it'll be all fine. I think they need more depth, and it's kind of when you come up against a side that have a very strong, like Fraser Brown was playing, Xander Fagerson, they're in the Scottish squad, they're strong internationals and they cause a lot of problems for Munster. So very good Glasgow side, to be fair, but you can't concede the tries they did the other night and expect to be happy with yourself. It's 28-0 at half time. They were very, very poor and they know that themselves.
Okay, what fixes this now? Because
what fixes this now, I think first of all they've got to make sure that their attitude is right and that they learn and understand that when you're on a good run, it can turn very, very quickly with a sloppy performance, not being on it mentally, getting the emotion right. They should have been fresh going into the game. They hadn't played in a couple of weeks. From what I'm hearing, the training is good. They're all seem very happy, and they've shown a lot of improvements. To be fair, we can't just kind of like, it doesn't surprise me because I still think the reality of the depth and.
Should they not have picked a stronger team for that? Should Snyman have started, or like?
No, I don't think so. Look, the reality for RG Snyman, and lots of people are asking me why isn't he starting. The guy hasn't played in 18 months.
So they're
the way they're playing now, Ger, with the fitness and the movement and the pace to their game, it requires a level of conditioning that's very, very high, and he is still has a bit of time to go there. And you know, you can't just put him out in the field and say he's going to play superb. It takes a long time. I've been there myself with the 6-month injuries. It takes a long time. So having him off the bench in the next couple of weeks will be really important. Maybe he'll start, but he needs more time. He needs more training. He needs more conditioning. So he's not going to come in and fix it. Peter O'Mahony, Conor Murray, Ty Byrne not been there. But like, they're not missing too many. That's probably the worry.
Yeah, is this a bit of a wake-up call then for?
It should be. Yeah, it should be. So they've given themselves a mountain now to climb, going to the Sharks and the Stormers and the Sharks in a couple of weeks. And from a league point of view, I know they go there next week in the Champions Cup. But
you've any hope for those 2 games, Sharks and Stormers?
It's hard to know. It depends what kind of team. Sharks were poor against Scarlets at the weekend. All the South Africans are at home in round 17 and 18, so it's
mountain to climb in some ways
for a lot of teams. And you know, it's really difficult. They've made it really difficult for themselves. But that's sport. They were poor at the weekend and they showed a lot better in the second half, but you can't start a game like that, and I'm sure when they review, they'll see lots of people falling off tackles, a little bit lazy in defence. They've got much fitter, and their attack has been superb this season. So there's a lot of positives around the way they've played. But I think what we saw at the weekend was the possible reality now in the next few weeks of that depth, the quality that you need throughout a squad.
This is squeaky bum time for the important part of the season, and everybody's going to have their full teams out.
Correct.
And so this is the reality of where Munster are. If they can somehow pull out a performance next weekend in the European Cup, that's a massive shot in the arm.
From an attack point of view, what we've seen the last few months, they've been really brilliant, and they've showed that against, Toulouse. in the Champions Cup and Northampton. Tough games against very strong teams. But somehow or another, I think mentally they were off it the other night. That's not to say they would have won the game. But if you concede 28 points at home, it's impossible. If they're, even the mistakes they made when they were 21-0 up, Glasgow, Munster were putting pressure on the line. Get a try or two there. Get in 21-7. It's a different story then, but it's just too much.
Here's a question. If the two teams so Leinster obviously named a very depleted team compared to what their first choice team is going to be. If that Leinster team had come up against that Munster team, you would have said Leinster would be slight favourites. Say that game was in Thomond in the league. It's hard to know exactly when you see the two teams. But what Leinster were able to do when the game was going against them was have the nous and the game smarts to stop it getting out of hand.
Correct.
And then they got back into it, and that's the bit that you'd be concerned about.
Well, they're proving that they have an ability to do that, and that they have the players to do that. There's players in that Leinster team on Friday night who could potentially be challenging for international places if they were somewhere else. It's probably coming against them because there's so much depth there. So many good players and a lot of young players and obviously it's the level of cohesiveness they're at. They're further down the road as regards their development and the kind of structure in and the level they're at, the standard that they're at training wise, all that kind of stuff. You've heard Dennis Leamy and Mike Prendergast speak about changing the way they play and the pace and the tempo. These Leinster players are doing this for years, so that was an incredible game Friday night, wasn't it? The reaction, the pace. Luke McGrath, just sometimes I wonder why he's out of the Irish squad. He's superb, fantastic. Rhys Ruddock, Penny, Max Deegan, these players. John McKee, the hooker, he's third choice essentially behind the other two internationals. So just quality players right across the board, and the pace and tempo to that was phenomenal. It was a great game.
Okay, so we just need to rein our expectations in about how quickly this
a little bit, and I wouldn't go overboard as regards. It wasn't good enough the other night. That's the reality. I think they're better than that, but they're not a team, and we've said it for a long time, that are winning European Cup or the URC. I think for them, being in the Europe next year and getting into the playoffs is a bonus, and they need to get better. They need to recruit more. They need to get some more players in, and most notably in that front row, it's to get more depth and quality there, and the more internationals you have in your team, the stronger you are right across the board. But I think the performance of the weekend was Connacht. They have won their last 5. 4 of those have been bonus point wins. Out of nowhere now, they're suddenly looking like they're in a playoff spot, and they're in Europe next year. If they win, their next game is at home to Cardiff. You think they'll win that with 5 points? That'll put them to 49. And then they're away against Glasgow in the last game. Glasgow may already have secured their 4th spot, which I think they will.
So they could be resting players.
Yeah, so Connacht, it's in Connacht's hands now, and I think it's a remarkable turnaround. If you end up winning 7, they've won 5 now. If they end up winning 7 games in a row, well, you just got to tip your hat to them. And I think the difference between Munster and Connacht on Saturday was, obviously Edinburgh are not going as good as Glasgow this year. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But that was a very strong Edinburgh team. A lot of internationals there, a lot of quality players, and Connacht just blew them away with pace, tempo, the attacking ability. Caelan Blade was outstanding. He scored 3 tries. Cathal Ford in the centre. What a find he's been. Shane Jennings came on there, looks like a great player as well. And if they get in the front foot Connacht like that, in good conditions, I think, and they were brilliant at the weekend.
And from an Ulster perspective, Quinny, Tom Stewart, I guess, is the man. I think it's 15 tries in 20 Ulster games, hat-trick, 7 in the last 3, which is remarkable.
A lot of them are from Moyles now, given of course. One of their big strengths this year.
Look, obviously you have Sheehan, you have Herring, you have Kelleher as well, but what does the next year or two look like for Tom Stewart?
Well, it's I'm a big fan of his. I think he's a really good player. He's abrasive, his skill set, his ability to carry around the field. He really has something about him. He's a quality player, and he's a great find for Ulster. He hasn't just kind of come out of nowhere. He's been in their system for a while. He was a very good schools player, underage player as well. I think he's a top quality player who's going to start pushing the ones above. The unfortunate thing, you think, for any hookers in this country is Dan Sheehan and Ronan Kelleher, they're probably going to be around for a lot. I know Ronan Kelleher, unfortunately, have had a couple of injuries, but Tom Stewart is a great player. I
You
think
basically
he's
need
doing
4 full-time hookers, who would be able to fit in seamlessly. And with Kelleher's injury profile and Herring's age profile, you can see Stewart getting plenty of game time for Ireland over the next World Cup cycle. And I was saying earlier, it wouldn't be shocking to see him involved in the World Cup squad. We do have to talk about the women's rugby team and their collapse against Wales. It's a massive letdown. It's all the air coming out of the balloon straight off, and it's very difficult to see how they can turn that around to try and finish anywhere other than it's a battle for 5th or 6th in the Six Nations. What happened?
They were overpowered, outskilled, and out-muscled by a Welsh side that are obviously ahead of them. It's amazing when you read stuff online, you read reports, and there's some people very critical. Some people are blaming the IRFU, some people are blaming the girls themselves. You have to really... For Greg McWilliams picking this squad, he's either picking the right players or he's picking the wrong players. That's the first thing. So he's got to back and believe what he's doing himself. I don't think there's any sort of decisions being made by him, cynical decisions of excluding players who spoke against the RFU. That's been mentioned a lot. I think he's trying to pick a team that he can build something for the future. There's a lot of young, inexperienced players here. The level they're playing at is still a problem. That isn't just going to have fixed itself, Ger, in one fell swoop. I think what's happened with contracted players and all that kind of stuff, that's going to take time. It's power development. And if you look at the game, go back and look at the game at the weekend, the tries they scored were all power, strength. Like there's 2 maul tries, there's 2 pick and goes tries, there's another try from the centre just going straight through that defensive line off a scrum, that back line, and the pace and the skill set of that, it was kind of frightening. So it was alarming to see the power and the pace and the skill set. All 23 of those girls are playing in the English Premiership, and it showed the gulf. Could Ireland have been better? Should they have been better? Yes. But I think it wasn't just down to power. Their skill set, their development, all that kind of stuff is further ahead. At
a structural level, though, it would be great if the RFU were able to come out and explain exactly how they're going to bridge the gap and what the plan is and what the time frame for that is. It feels a little bit like the contracts were reactionary, and it feels a little bit like the IRFU have constantly been on the back foot ever since there was a letter published to shame them into doing something. Yeah. They weren't out in front of that in advance, and like their relationship with the women's game seems kind of a little bit like the old FAI relationship with the League of Ireland. It's like, we should do something. How are we supposed to fix this? Oh, let's get some people in. And I don't think they don't appear to be as behind it as they are the men's game. They haven't looked at the structures and gone, okay, is there just something, can we just rip this idea off from here and put this on here? It doesn't feel like they're as enthusiastic about it as they should be.
Yeah, if you look at the report, a lot of changes have happened as a result of the report. I think if you go back probably a number of years, that's where the problems. They've reacted to the report. Okay, they've reacted to the pressure, and I think they've done a lot of positive things have started to happen. Like I've listened to girls and women's rugby in the last 12 to 18 months saying how brilliant things are, how it's great to get the contracts, it's great to get the new changes, the support networks, the team manager, the connection between the RFU and the women's team. But
they are all employees, you know.
Yeah, but even some people on the outside who are not. Of course, there's people very critical and still going back blaming the RFU. So we can stay blaming the RFU or
we've got to hold them to account, I think.
Oh no, for sure. But it is what it is at the moment. You have a bunch of very inexperienced girls who are finding their feet, and that's going to take time. That's the other side of the coin. There's 8 of these players who were involved last year against Wales. There's so many new players in there. There's a lot of young players. Sive McGrath was making her debut at 18 in the front row. You know what I mean? There's a number of players playing their first Six Nations game.
Yeah.
So very relatively inexperienced. So maybe Greg McWilliams has the answers. Maybe I don't know as regards. I think some of the implementation of the what the ladies wanted out of the report and what came out of the report, they're going to take time, Ger, to get a return on that. And the reality, you have to deal in reality here. The other teams are further down the field.
Yeah, I totally accept the other teams are further down the field, and that if you were planning this whole thing, you wouldn't start from where you are now. But it still doesn't feel to me like the IRFU are on top of the issues, and it still doesn't feel to me like so.
So what are the issues?
Well, the pathway from the club game to the provincial game.
Problem.
The fact that we haven't really invested that enough in the contracts to even convince some of the players to come back from England. Maybe we should actually outsource for a couple of years. We should outsource some players.
So what's
to England.
happened is development officers have been put into all the provinces now to try and recruit more girls to upskill them, but that is at the very lower base level. So that stuff should have been happening years ago, and then you might have more players to choose from. They're playing at a higher level, and the simple maths of this is if you're a coach and you've a bigger group of players, bigger pool to pick from, and they're playing at a higher level, it's easier. There's a number of these girls, Irish girls, over playing in the Premiership as well. If you had all of them over there playing week in, week out, would they be better, do you think?
Instinctively, you'd say in the short term. Obviously, that's not your long-term solution, but maybe the right thing to do is to allow half of them or help more of them to get over to England to play.
I would think it'd be better, wouldn't
in the short term. And obviously, at the same time, you're trying to build up the provinces. So I don't know the chapter and verse of it, but I do follow some people who are constantly saying that the committee approach to it has been largely led by people who were responsible for the issues in the first place, and that they're not actually addressing the long-term issues. So that's, I know, and look, these things have to be debated, and on the evidence of what we saw at the weekend, it was poor, it was worrying, it was. They've got France at home next, which doesn't get any easier. But I think that Welsh team, I was in the RDS last year when Wales beat Ireland 29-17, and the gap wasn't. Yeah. You could see that it was a bit of strength and power. Tupolota, she scored a try at the weekend. She's a cousin of the Vunipolos, and they've obviously rugby blood, and she's very powerful. But she played last year. But that game last year in the RDS, it came down to a little bit of power. At the weekend, it was a lot of power. Yeah. It was a lot of the skills, the pace. And in fairness, I think they reacted in the second half. It does happen. It was like Munster coming back when they're 28-0 down. The girls came back. They sorted their scrum out. Okay, we got to go.
They have problems, and
unfortunately, we have
worrying.
5 or 6 weeks of this to look forward to talk more about it. Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million. On tomorrow's show, Kenny Cunningham live in studio for the entire show. Keith Tracy's going to join us in studio as well to react to Ireland and France. Philippe Leclair will give us his thoughts. Kelly Harrington, more on the fallout from Ireland's fallout with Wales, and plenty more besides. Right now, the best of the Sunday paper review from rugby analyst Andy McGeady and Co-Ramblers boss Shane Keegan. Fare thee well.
Talk now on with the papers. We've been talking Ireland, France largely. Lots of rugby coverage of different varieties. Andy, I know obviously you'd have a very keen eye on the rugby coverage. We'll come to the women's situation in a moment. Ireland beaten 31-5 by Wales. On the men's rugby, both Stephen Jones in the Sunday Times and Charlie Morgan in the Telegraph are, I would say, like a lot of rugby fans maybe, concerned about the yellow red card situation and the havoc it may well play at the World Cup. So he says the action, Stephen Jones that is, the action in green and white last weekend in Dublin was not the problem. It was when red and yellow interrupted the match. Everyone had that sinking feeling. Our huge games at the World Cup liable to be wrecked by rugby's protective shield against head trauma, even when the shield is misused, as it was last weekend. And he says that, in the crowd, stone cold red card was one reaction I heard as we waited. Not even a penalty, his neighbour said. And we had that same reaction play out across the week publicly. We had Bernard Jackman on Against the Head saying it's not even a penalty in my view, and we had Brandon Driscoll in this studio outline why he absolutely thinks it's a red, and everything in between. So the point that Stephen Jones makes is that rugby might need to follow Super Rugby here. What they do is, when an incident like the Steward tackle, for want of a better phrase, happens with Keenan, the yellow card is given, the player goes to the sin bin, and the officials use that 10 minutes for another TMO in the calm of those 10 minutes on his or her own to decide whether that yellow should be upgraded to a red, and if not, it's a yellow, and the player still comes back on after the 10 minutes. So instead of Jakob Piper and his assistants with the crowd going, ooh, when it's replayed again and again on a big screen, just give the yellow, you get on with the game very quickly, and then another TMO will quietly take time, have 10 minutes to consider, maybe make a phone call, who knows, 10 minutes to consider if the yellow should be upgraded to a red, and we might get better decisions. It seems like a very sensible suggestion. It works well in Super Rugby. Now, the week that's been would illustrate that even 10 minutes is not enough to have everybody in agreement, but it might increase the odds, I suppose, Andy. This is a no-brainer, no pun intended, goodness me, when we're talking about head trauma and rugby.
Yeah. Now, we're into a young Super Rugby season where they are trialling it. I've seen it run through a few times, including where they had to upgrade it to a red after the review. To me, it's a really, really no-lose, no-regrets move for rugby union. You remove that element of where sometimes we can sort of say, what is he taking so long about? Okay, now the official isn't sitting there wanting to take time. It's just there's a lot of pressure, and between the referee, their assistant referees, and the TMO, they're talking various aspects through, and usually in a language which might not always be clear to us, but it's based in points of rugby law. So it's almost they're talking in their own code at times. And then, of course, for the people in the stadium, we don't know what's going on. We don't know what they're talking about. So the trial as it is works really well. You flash the yellow card. If it seems to be yellow and you're only really talking about yellow versus red, you get that player off the field. You let that person then in the booth, without the crowd, quietly get on with it. And then Stephen Jones has a nice summary here, which the idea in Super Rugby is that an official will be allowed to make a call in silence with no one howling and no one shouting at him. Take your time, yellow confirmed or upgraded to red. Yeah. Now, what they're doing in Super Rugby is that it only gets upgraded to their 20-minute yellow card, the trial that we had on this side of the world as well, and we've ditched it. Charlie Morgan reports that if it does go, it would be a permanent red for the World Cup. They wouldn't be dealing with a 20-minute red. But I think your point is well made, that with the Stuart Keenan decision, maybe they would have landed on yellow, but it absolutely could have been not even a penalty. And there's a source who Charlie Morgan cites liberally, said was involved in the refereeing in this Six Nations, and that source said, with hindsight, the judgment ruled that a yellow card was sufficient, but we need to acknowledge in the Stewart incident it was a very rare scenario. We don't get a decision that could have 3 potential outcomes very often, which I thought was a point very well made, because full disclosure, I was at the game, I was kind of thinking that kind of looks like awkward, but play on, and I could completely see why the red card was given at the same time. But to me, to use your term, no-brainer.
Yeah. The Farrell's family dynamic, the Shakespearean quality of it caught your eye. Paul Kimmage is writing about that, Shane.
Yeah. Well, just the dynamic itself. I'll be honest, it was gas. As I say, I wouldn't be massively immersed in rugby union by any stretch of the imagination, but I did comment last week at home, just in my home house. I just said to my wife, I said that whole Farrell thing, I said, it really, really interests me or fascinates me how that actually works in terms of their conversations with each other. And then I opened the paper today and saw this, so I was really, really interested to see it. I suppose, firstly, like Andy Farrell as a person really, really interests me. I, for whatever reason, I've never overly got sucked in by rugby union, but took madly into rugby league in the late 90s, and particularly, I suppose, that Wigan Warriors team himself and Radzinski and Jason Robinson and guys like that. And he just struck me as a fella who had leader printed across his forehead from a very, very, very young age. And then I started to hear about the fact that he had a child extremely young. And I think that does feed into all this as well. The fact that there's 16 years between these two people. I've got some very, very good friends who are 16 years either older or younger than me. Do you know what I mean? I think 16 years is not a massive gap. You can be, of very similar thinking and, very, very close friends to somebody who might be 16 years. So that, to me, alters the dynamic almost to a certain extent as well. And I suppose, having read the piece as well, I just don't know how he does it. I genuinely don't know how he does it. The thoughts of my young fella's into all kinds of sports at the moment. He's into hurling. He has been brought up in a parish different to the parish that I'm from. Could I end up managing my parish against the parish that he now lives in 10 years' time when he's playing senior hurling? Like, what do you say in a team talk? Like, I'm judging by, remind me who makes the comments to you, Joe, in studio last week. This is how bad I am. Rob Kearney.
It's in advance of kick-off last week at the View Stadium, and Rob Kearney, who played for obviously a number of years with Andy Farrell, part of the setup, I asked him about Farrell versus Farrell, and he said when Andy first came into the squad and we would discuss Owen in team meetings and some of the reviews, there were times when he would step out of the room, and as players we were always very conscious. We'd be talking about Owen and, looking around, where's Dad? Rob Kearney continues, fast forward to the 2018 Grand Slam game at Twickenham. We're in the team hotel before the match. Owen comes up on the screen and Andy stops it and goes, when you get your hands on Owen today, and I won't repeat fully what was said Rob, but he said it with such emotion and everyone in the room just went, wow, if he can talk about his son like that, that's how much this performance means to him. That's how much he wants to win today. And I put it to him, that was the first time you remember him referencing Owen. And Kearney says, it was the first time. And what a time to do it, a few hours before a Grand Slam game against England at Twickenham. It was one of those moments where your hair stands up. And I said previously, you suspected he stepped out of the room. And Kearney said he stepped out of the room. It was probably awkward for him. It was awkward for us as players. It was awkward for Joe Schmidt because Joe would be highlighting some of Owen's weaknesses in front of his dad. It was all just very weird. And then that moment before the Grand Slam game, it was a surreal situation. It really was.
Like, I'm not going to put words in Rob Kearney's mouth, right? But if when you get your hands on Owen, if the information that followed that statement was technical, as in, I don't know, give me the equivalent of showing him onto your weaker foot in soccer or whatever that is in rugby. If the information being given there was technical, well, then I think Rob could have given us the exact words that he said, if that makes sense.
We can safely say it was in keeping with what defence coaches say about what to do when you get your hands on
any other player
number 10
of that kind. Exactly. And that's my point here. Is that's extremely difficult to do. I would think. I'm trying to think ahead to being in his shoes there. I actually, to be honest with you, when I managed our senior hurlers the year before last, I went and spoke to a guy that I was looking to bring in as a selector, and the exact reason he knocked me back was, well, hold on, I could be a selector here for Downey Earl. My own young fella is playing for Bursley Cotton. I just can't do it to myself, Shane. And I went, completely understandable. And this is at the lowest, you know what I mean? This is at club standard leash hurling. Multiply this by 1 million for what these two guys are facing into. I don't know how he does it. I really don't.
Do you not think, though, that the Farrells, this is all they've ever known? This tough, hard-nosed professionalism. This is life, and this is what you do, and it's very compartmentalised. And smash him, whatever he said, I don't know exactly, but he'll be fine. He's a tough egg, and I'll see him afterwards, and all is fair. And Owen will understand that, and I understand that. This is the world that we've inhabited since our teenage years in both instances. I would think that's how he would see it. If anything, the surprise for me, what I found most fascinating, was the revelation that he would step out of the room. Previous to that, I would have thought from 2013 he would have been talking about the opposition's son or not, the way he was in 18. That for me was the surprising thing.
I'd wonder, is there something else unmentioned there? Was there a change in the dynamic, not between the Farrells or between Andy Farrell and the Ireland squad, but Andy Farrell's place in the coaching team? Was there a difference there in terms of that dynamic with Joe? That's the question I'd love to ask both sides of that, which is, how come there was this difference? Because if you're an international coach, would you be happy that you've got this source of information about a key opposition player and you can't get that information? You can't. That would, to me, be another side of this whole argument. Because I would view the Farrells as being a very, very unusual family. Okay, in that how many people are 16 years apart playing in the same professional sporting environment at the highest of levels. When you look at Andy's background in rugby league, he's now coaching at the highest level in rugby union, and Owen Farrell, we know what he's done. I would absolutely think that right back to the Saracens era, that's just their environment. It's seen as completely normal in a way that we cannot possibly comprehend.
Yeah, I don't know. I get that, Joe. Yeah, completely. But you still have to utter the words with passion and meaning. Hit my son hard.
No, it's true. It's not.
Hit my son hard. Who says that?
You're not saying show him onto his left.
Yeah.
You know? Who says that?
When you get your hands on Owen,
everything inside you tells you that you hit the person who hits your son. Not that you direct people to hit your son.
Can I offer one little extra here before we leave this? My son beat me 4-0 at chess yesterday. He's 6. If anyone wants to, just hit him really hard for me, I'm kind of okay with that right now.
Yeah. Just one last point on the Six Nations men's rugby that was. Hugh Farrell, I think, makes a fair point. Disrespected Schmidt waiting in long grass for Ireland. So he starts off by just charting the extent to which Joe Schmidt, and I think people are aware of this now, Joe Schmidt was very aware of what was being said in the media. He monitored journalists very closely, and Hugh Farrell fell into that bracket, and he remembers publishing a story that Cian Healy was going to miss a Leinster game when Joe was Leinster coach, and it was on the back pages, and he got a phone call from Joe Schmidt that day, angry that this information had found its way onto the pages. Do you not see how this helps the opposition? Asked Joe Schmidt repeatedly. Do you not want us to win the game? Hugh Farrell had to explain that the paper was independent of Leinster. Anyway, they won the game. There was no lasting acrimony, and they had a pretty good relationship. He writes, exhaustive media analysis is but one facet of Schmidt's defining attention to detail approach, but it remained an unhelpful obsession and it proved increasingly problematic. So the implication is he will absolutely have noticed the way his legacy has been talked down. Farrell thinks it's wrong. Schmidt remains an exceptional coach and an exceptional human being. Now, like Warren Gatland before him, he has plenty of personal motivation to put one over on Irish rugby. Farrell calls the revisionism on Schmidt, it's beyond disrespectful, it's obscene, and it could well come back to haunt us. Joe is waiting in the long grass, and he says he may not have been able to escape Ireland's World Cup hex, but 2 European Cups, back-to-back Six Nations titles, Test win in South Africa, Grand Slam, busting 111 years of history by beating New Zealand and then backing it up, makes Schmidt the most successful coach in Irish rugby history. Yet switch on the radio, TV, pick up a paper, scroll your phone for rugby coverage, and you'd swear Joe Schmidt has been a disaster when it compared to the current regime. Consistently hammered. And he says people have short memories. Anytime I have to say I ask a Joe Schmidt question now, I do couch it in Joe Schmidt was amazing, and I mean that very sincerely. However, it's fair to say there have been some improvements in the Farrell era, etc., and on we go, because it does feel like his achievements are overshadowed by 19 in particular and the World Cup failures, and I put 15 down to bad luck. In many ways, the injury situation, as much as anything. 19, things fell apart, sure, but the legacy has taken more of a blow than I ever thought when he was sailing off into the sunset.
It's weird. It's as if, because, the World Cups are, when we get to this stage, as Ireland have been for the last, I suppose, 3-4 cycles, that's how Ireland coaches are measured. Grand Slams are brilliant. We should not take them for granted. Championship's great. His work with Leinster, brilliant. The very end of the era was not an attractive style of rugby that was being played, and when I read that Hugh Farrell piece, I was like, yes, that's what people are saying, that's what people are remembering. But everything that Andy Farrell has done has been built on this foundation that Joe Schmidt built, and it was a foundation that brought us success like we really have never known at a consistent level. So I read this and I was going, yeah, I'm absolutely saying that, I'm absolutely reading that, I'm absolutely hearing it, and it's not right. Maybe in the rush to praise the current team, I think Farrell is kind of getting without coming out and saying it. There's a bit of, we'll stick the knife in now because we didn't have a brilliant time with Joe.
It does imply that, yeah. That there's almost a degree of, personally, we didn't find him easy to deal with, therefore there's an extra freedom now in castigating his regime.
Little bit. That comes through about 2/3 way through the piece, and just after the piece you read, actually. And I'm not sure that's fair either, but it is, to my mind, it is inarguable that the sentiment he describes has come through loud and clear, including from players.
But that's the thing. I mean, Andrew Porter, who seems like world's nicest man, even just a couple of weeks ago in conversation with David Walsh, talked about counting the speed bumps on the way to Carton House out of sheer dread, the stress of the environment. Whereas now his fiancée jokes, geez, you can't wait to get away from me, to get in there. All of the players, the experienced ones, O'Mahony, Cian Healy, have said it's the most enjoyable environment they've ever been a part of. I mean, you don't want your ex-partner with their new partner to say, this is the most enjoyable relationship I've ever been in. So the implication is clear, you know, and Schmidt will pick up on that. I'd say he's hurt by it. He's more sensitive than he might have let on.
Well, I found it very, very interesting that he does engross himself that much in what's in the media and what's said in the media about him.
Very, very well known in the sector
Really,
at the time.
yeah.
Yes, I had a file.
He was fastidious. There were rumours, whether they're true or not, of like a file, and you have a good sense of what each journalist was saying.
Because it's amazing, you see, I suppose, and I suppose you just have to remind yourself that people are just people, because I would have thought, like, I would be like that, you know, I would keep an eye out for all kinds of League of Ireland talk, and at times I'll justify it to myself by saying, well, I might pick up, you know, a little bit of information here or there about opposition if I'm keeping an eye on the different podcasts or the different, you know, articles. Now, quite often you're looking to see, well, what are they actually saying about you? Let's be completely honest about. But you look at guys like this and you think, well, they're operating at a different level. They don't care what anybody says about them. In my head, but that's obviously completely not the case. Doesn't matter how high a level you're operating, or you are.
It would be interesting to see now if the IRFU comms guys start putting a nice couple of little pieces out there, maybe with, you know, interviews, and it's about the long relationship and happy relationship between Irish rugby and New Zealand rugby, and painting Joe in a very positive light, and, you know, just again to sort of sow the seeds of don't hurt us, Joe. Don't, please.
Was he overly sensitive to it? Would it have been perceived that he's overly sensitive?
It's hard to know, because publicly he never gave any sense that he was watching things closely.
Okay.
So I don't know if he felt that he was doing it in a very dispassionate, professional way to keep a good feel of the temperature, or if it was that more human, like, what are they saying about me?
Don't bloody read it unless if you're going to be overly sensitive about it.
Yeah, we don't know.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.